welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. As we do every day with introductions, he's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright, and good morning.
Man, what a few weeks to be a Philadelphian.
Oh, yeah.
Basketball team on a hot streak, win a Super Bowl, and go ahead and peel another national championship. Does Jay Wright.
Get in the playoffs.
Man.
But is anyone smoother about it than Jay Wright?
No.
He just walks the walk. He's having a good time. Life is good.
He was pretty good. Everything except that tie bar on the suit thing.
I knew
you had
it was
such a hard time with that.
Can I ask you a personal question?
I'm afraid, but okay.
Do you have just the slightest crush on Jay Wright?
Oh,
Just
there's no doubt.
Okay.
It's there.
It's more than the slightest.
Yeah, I have a crush on two people, Danny Ainge and Jay Wright. I've been very open about that.
One of those totally understandable. The other one, man.
Okay, well, let's not say which one is which. Let's just get into it. I love Jay. He was always great with me when I was in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. So. He's been great to the show.
All right, speaking of the big marquee game last night, so 2 months ago, the aforementioned Jay Wright came on this show. He laughed, he smiled, he talked about the joy of college basketball, and I thought to myself, no way this guy's going to win another title. He's too nice. Well, Jay Wright won a title last night, another one. Villanova capping off their dominant tournament performance with a 79-62 win over Michigan, led by 31 points. Out of the guy of the night, Dante DiVincenzo, off the bench. Wildcats win their second national title in 3 years, beating Michigan. All right, let's start the conversation with you, Chris Carter. How are the Wildcats able to be so dominant, not only the entire season, but then, of course, in the biggest game of the tournament?
Well, for people who didn't watch the regular season that close, they might not understand why Villanova was there. 14 of the weeks during the season, they were the #1 ranked team, but they had a couple injuries during the season that it only made the team stronger once they got into the tournament. So not only are they one of the best teams, we know with Coach Wright they're one of the best coach teams, but with these injuries during the season, it allowed them to put minutes on other players that ultimately would be the key to them winning the third title in school history. Their ability to understand what they were doing offensively, because they are a three-point shooting team, and even when the three-point shots weren't going, they stuck with their system. They start going to more isolation, taking guys off the dribble, which we hadn't seen them do a whole bunch, not the whole lineup. But Jay Wright, they were able to change the game plan during the game when they weren't hitting the three-point shots, go to more isolation to get the offense going. And then ultimately, I mean, this is the best team in college basketball because of their overall depth. We saw they have the super sub, Dante, come off the bench. Man. And when you have that type of productivity, they're going to be hard to beat in college basketball. Also, it's refreshing. They have a star freshman. They have a star sophomore, star junior, and we know their senior class, like they've been winners since they've been there. So this is the combination that I believe is lethal in college basketball and supersedes the one-and-dones with all the attention on all the freshmen. A program like Villanova that has those stars at every level. And I mean, this is not going to stop. When you can build a program like Jay's done, you can be competitive every year.
And I want to talk about the program and what this means for Nova historically in a moment. We alluded to yesterday what rarefied air they would go into with a third championship, what rarefied air Jay Wright as a coach would go into with a second championship. Before we do that, you mentioned the star sub, Dante DiVincenzo. Like, this guy is a sub in name only, right? He comes off the bench, but he was their fourth leading scorer during the year. He plays starters minutes. And what we saw from him in the first half reminded me of Jerry McNamara at Syracuse, Carmelo's year, 18 points in the first half, 6 3-pointers against Kansas. What Jerry McNamara, Syracuse ended up winning that title, but Jerry McNamara got then shut down in the second half. DiVincenzo won them this basketball game, in my eyes, with his 9 consecutive points in the second half.
To start the second half, he didn't start, but 52 seconds into it.
He was back in there.
I mean, Jay put him right in.
And that was a great call by Jay.
Jay Wright wasn't going to totally adjust, wasn't going to change what they'd been doing all year long. They got to the national championship starting these 5, starting the second half with these 5, the same as their game starters, but he knew who his hot hand was. This was a game that was playing exactly the way Michigan wanted it to. With 5.5, 6 minutes left in the first half, Michigan's up 21-16. And then to close the first half, It was a 21-7 run by Villanova. That was part of a larger run that was 35-12. And I tweeted at halftime, it felt like the game got away from Michigan those last 5 minutes. Like, they had played so well for the first 15. To go into halftime down nearly double digits was going to be so difficult for them to overcome. And DiVincenzo was spectacular. Now, this is a team that's got two definite pros on it. DiVincenzo might be a pro. It's got a lottery pick on it, Mikal Bridges. But he was the guy last night that led them to victory. 30 points in a national championship game is a tremendous feat.
And here's what's so great about him, too, is that the other players rallied around him, right? They even said, hey, we knew he had the hot hand. We didn't need to be the star. We've been the star. It was great to see him come off the bench, and it was nice to know, like, what a great team concept they have. But this wasn't just the final game that this Nova team dominated. I mean, they covered the spread every game. They were so dominant throughout the entire tournament. How were they able to do that, CC?
Man, they're really talented. I mean, they can score the basketball. Let's not forget, during the regular season, NCAA leading 83 points a game, and to be able to play that type of pace, that was going to be a problem for Michigan. Big Ten plays a great brand of basketball, but their inability to build score in the upper 70s or 80 points, as we can see, the numbers would indicate if it was going to be a game that was going to have that type of pace, Michigan was going to have a hard time being able to defeat Villanova. Also, Michigan forgot Mo Wagner. They forgot to throw the ball to him. He had the mismatch of the game. As you can see, when they started the game, the second half or the first half, they did not go back into the paint. When they did a lot of pick and roll, and they would get the mismatch with him on a smaller player. And they forgot to go to him, keep going to him. He was getting fouls. He was getting easy shots. I believe Villanova was afraid. That was the only offensive player from Michigan that they were afraid of. So when they went away from that, that also led to Villanova getting this win.
When we went to the first commercial break, Wagner had 7 points. At the under 16, he's got 7 points. He then finishes with 16, and there were a lot of mismatches. There were a lot of times you had a small guard on him, and they were not getting him the basketball. To your point about them embracing DiVincenzo's game, he needed to have this game because Jalen Brunson, the National Player of the Year, the best player in college basketball according to all the awards this year, was in foul trouble and was not on from the field. It was Mikal Bridges and DiVincenzo that led him to the victory. To your point, though, about the dominant performance, now this is only the second team since the field has expanded to 64 teams that has won every game by at least a dozen points. Their average margin of victory was nearly 18 points. That's
outstanding.
And by the way, so for example, the team that had a better average margin of victory en route to a national championship was the Villanova team 2 years ago. And you might say, how could that be? They won a game. They won the national championship on a buzzer beater. That was a close game. Their Elite Eight game was a close game. That's because they had a couple 30 and 40-point wins mixed in there. Villanova was just beating everybody by 12 to 25 points. Like every game in this tournament, they were just so clearly the best team out there. And unlike Michigan, it's not taking anything away from Michigan, who had a fortuitous turn in the bracket. Until the national championship game, they hadn't played a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 seed. Villanova played about the toughest bracket you could play. It played true to seed. They played a 3 instead of a 2, but they didn't have any Cinderellas in their path. They were beating, after the first game against Radford, some of the best teams in college basketball, and they were winning these games by halftime.
So now Villanova they've won 2 out of the last 3. What does this mean? Where do they sit big picture? Where does that fall for you?
Trying to build a program. I mean, continue. They might lose. They're going to definitely lose one guy. They could lose as many as 3 guys. If the freshman Spellman decides to go into the draft, you have to replace him. I'm not going to put them in the category as far as what do they do next. Are they for next year's? Because there's too many moving parts. There's too many freshmen coming in that we don't know about. But Jay Wright's team will be very, very good. They will be the favorite in the Big East again. When you look at Xavier, who they had problems with during the regular season, right?
Yep.
They lose their coach.
They beat Xavier twice in the regular season, but Xavier ended their streak of consecutive conference championships.
Yes. Now, Xavier, they're losing their coach, Chris Mack, to Louisville. Yep. So what will they do from there? But they are the preeminent team, especially on the East Coast. Like, I think they have a transfer coming over is going to help them. They can play. They got a big time. They got a top 15 freshman coming in, a 5-star recruit that's going to help them. But it really hinges on, does Brunson decide to come back for his 4th year. And does Spellman, the freshman, does he decide to go to the NBA? I think he should come back. That's where Villanova is going forward.
And DiVincenzo will come back. Like, I understand people
absolutely.
are so, I mean, I think he might end up being an NBA player, but he will come back. He's not a leave early type of player. I'd be very surprised if Mikal Bridges go be a pro, go make money, go be a top 15 pick. There's no question about it. But as far as what this means for the program to me, you got to keep in mind who you're recruiting. Everyone you're recruiting at this point in college basketball was born in the year 2000 or later, right? That's how young these guys are. Since the year 2000 to now, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have won more championships in these players' lifetimes. I'm not even including, obviously, their first one in '85. From 2000 to now, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have a better winning history for when these players were alive to watch college basketball. Like, Villanova has won as many championships in the last 3 years as Kansas, one of the true blue bloods, has won in the last 60 years.
That's crazy.
They've won as many championships they've won more championships in the last 2 years in the last 3 years than UCLA has won in the last 30 years. Like, so the blue blood thing can kind of be fluid. And if you're a young recruit and you say, I want to play for a cool program, I want to play in a cool city, and I want to play for a program that has a winning history.
And a good coach.
And a great coach.
Sorry,
a great coach.
throw that out there.
That is, Villanova now is all of a sudden near, if not at the top of that list.
Right. They end up getting one of the recruits that left Arizona, with Arizona involved in the shoe scandal.
Right. Yep.
He's decided to come to Villanova. So the kids out there, their eyes are on Villanova as a viable option, one of the top programs.
We have Jason Capel coming on a little bit later. We'll talk more about this game. All right, coming up, could the Patriots really be moving on from Rob Gronkowski? Talk about that next on First Things First. Anyway, hey, have we seen the last of Gronk in New England? Because rumors are swirling that Bill Belichick is frustrated with the fact that his tight end hasn't been willing to fully commit to the Pats this season. Oh, but don't worry, because rumors are also swirling that Gronk is equally as frustrated with the strict confines of the Patriot way. No official word from either side, but it appears as if things could potentially be getting contentious in New England. Cece, could the Patriots really trade Gronkowski? You think that's something that's actually on the table?
Anyone's been following the Patriots through the years. No, anyone can be traded except Tom Brady. Like, we all know that. There's no one that Bill Belichick won't trade. I mean, anyone. Anyone in that organization, well, the Krafts, the Sons, and Brady.
The adopted son, Tom Brady, the one that Robert Kraft told you was another son of his.
Yes, that's it. Anyone else in New England, as we can see with the offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, equipment guy, doctors, like all those people can go. And Belichick will get rid of most of them. But Gronk can be traded. But my thing is, I believe that Gronk, he has let this information get out there, but I believe Gronk is smart enough to realize that things would be different in his life without Tom Brady. So he doesn't necessarily like how they do things in New England, but he's also understanding that, wow, man, they come up with a great game plan for me week in, week out. They put me outside. They find the mismatches in every defense. So every game I'm in with New England, I got a chance to be a superstar, especially with TB12 throwing the ball to him. So, yes, Gronk might not be happy with the situation there. And New England, of course, they can trade. They'll trade anyone.
Right.
We've seen them trade some of their best players. And that's one of Bill Belichick's things that he does. He likes to get out of a relationship at the right time for him. When he feels like you might have a little more football left in you, but your interest has started to change, or I have to give you a new contract, that's when Belichick typically gets off of those players.
I think Rob Gronkowski would love to be a free agent. I don't know that he would love to be traded.
Well, he's not going to ever be a free agent.
Agreed. That's the point that Rob is unhappy in New England, or at least not as happy as he would like to be in New England. And if he could pick a team to go to, I'm sure he'd love to do that. But that's not the situation in which he's in. He's got 2 years left on his contract. The Patriots would, if they wanted to,
at a reasonable number.
At a very reasonable number, which, by the way, I think you could argue might make him more likely to be traded, only because you have 2 years of a reasonable number for an excellent player. That is a more attractive asset. We talked about Odell being available, right? Odell, I believe, to be a better player than Rob Gronkowski. It's close, but I believe Odell's better. But if you trade for Odell, what comes with that is you have to instantly give him an enormous contract. Trade for Gronk, you got him for $8 million this year, $9 million next year. But there's an aspect to this that I think that people are forgetting or not considering, which is what was the Patriots' major free agent loss this offseason? Nate Solder, their left tackle. When we talk about Rob Gronkowski, the highlights are obviously him wreaking havoc as a pass catcher. But what is one of the things everyone says about Rob Gronkowski? Absent of pass catching, the best blocking tight end in football. We also know how paramount Tom Brady's health is, particularly now that they have no backup plan at quarterback. Not that there was ever a great non-Tom Brady plan. How much are you willing to put Brady at risk? How much are you willing to put your running game at risk in the same offseason if you lose your best offensive lineman and your best down-the-line blocker in Rob Gronkowski? Like, there is an aspect to that. I know people will be like, last 2 years, 12-1 without Gronk. They're fine without Gronk. You go a little deeper into the actual football part of it. With the loss of Nate Solder, Gronk, to me, becomes more valuable than he had been.
I don't know if Rob Gronkowski is as tradable as we think he is, because he has gone away from the Patriot way more than any other player on that team. Things he said, the things he's done, the hit he had last year. I mean, if anyone has strayed from Bill Belichick's sort of, confining modes, I think it's been Rob Gronkowski, and there's never been an instance or a conversation we've had where he's been on the trading block in any way. You talk about this concept of all in. Is he all in on this team? What does that really mean? I mean,
he's not. He's not all in.
What does all in mean? I mean, what happens at this point in the season? We're in April. What does all in mean that Belichick would say, this guy does want to be here or doesn't want to be here?
Well, the thing about Gronk has let the information get out that he's not happy with the way they do things, which is not surprising. I think it's hard to analyze football players in the offseason. Are they all in? It's the offseason. You don't have to be all in. You really don't have to be all in. Gronk has never said he wanted to be traded. We're basically talking about, because Gronk's not happy, will Belichick potentially trade him?
Exactly.
Because he's not happy. All right? Now, Belichick getting this information, I'm sure he's not surprised by it. I'm sure New England is looking at every option available for him, but I don't believe that Gronk necessarily helped himself if he was traded by saying that he didn't like it in New England, because I believe that Gronk's injuries, because a lot of times people forget who you are. Like, when you get when you get his medical form, you're going to be like, wow, how much football does this guy have left? And if he doesn't like playing in New England, he doesn't like winning, wow, what's going to keep his attention in pro football after this one season? Like, I don't want to trade for Gronk and he's going to every year be like, is he going to retire or not? So I believe that Gronk, I believe it was his natural instinct to say, man, I'm questioning how long I want to do this. But in doing that, it's not going to endear him to a lot more teams than who would have been interested in Gronk's services.
And Gronk, I know people don't look at Gronk and say, that's a brilliant guy, but he's not a dumb person. And he knows where he plays and who he plays for. And he knows the implications when someone with his type of prominence and social media following goes on Instagram and Twitter. And it's one thing to congratulate Danny Amendola. It's another thing on Instagram and Twitter to say in all caps, you're free. He knows the reverberations that will have on shows like this, and most importantly, in New England. And he chose to do it anyway. And so we'll see how Belichick feels about it.
All right, let's talk some basketball on the other side. Coming up, are the Rockets in the driver's seat for the title? Next on First Things First. Time for stories to start your morning. Villanova dominated Michigan last night, 79-62, to take home their second title in 3 years. Wildcats were led by sixth man Dante DiVincenzo, who dropped in 31 points, took home the Most Outstanding Player award. It was a great season for Villanova. Nick, how was Nova able to dominate the Wolverines?
After basically about 15 minutes of the Wolverines playing their style of basketball, Nova started hitting shots, and it felt to me a little bit like Michigan went away from their game plan. You saw a few times, particularly early in the second half, Nova came down, hit a shot, and Michigan did what you can't do against this team. Take a quick bad shot. You take a quick bad shot against Villanova, you're drawing dead. You got to basically play a perfect game to beat this team when they're fully healthy anyway, and they got away from their game plan. And Cece, you brought up Mo Wagner, like, They didn't get their best player of the ball.
Yeah, he should get more than 11 shots. He played 33 minutes. He dominated the beginning, the first 10 minutes of the game. You got to get him more shots than that. But also you have to look at the veteran players and Jay Wright, everyone deferring offensively to go to Dante. Like, we're going to run the offense through him. That was not the plan A. That was not plan B. But in this game, they decided that was the best thing to do. That's how Nova gets that win.
It was great.
All right, congratulations to them. To the NFL now, Jimmy Garoppolo went 5-0 as a starter for the 49ers last season. That was more than enough for head coach Kyle Shanahan, who said he knew Jimmy G was their guy after just 3 games. 49ers gave Garoppolo a 5-year, $137.5 million contract this offseason. So, hey, hopefully 3 games was enough. So, CeCe, what are realistic expectations for Jimmy G this season?
Get San Francisco into the playoffs.
Ooh, playoffs?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the question was. What's the expectations, Chris?
Right.
Chris said get them to the playoffs. Like, absolutely. Get into the playoffs. You look at the competition they have in that division. Look at Seattle. Seattle's coming back to the field. Arizona's in transition, looking for a quarterback with a new coach. Yes, absolutely. San Francisco should have their eyes set on the playoffs.
Man, if they were in the AFC, I might agree with you. I think fair expectations are getting to 8 wins, maybe 9 wins. The one team you left out in their division is, I think, an excellent team in the Los Angeles Rams.
Well, I know they're the best. I thought the fans would know that.
Okay,
I mean, you got to give them some credit.
Of course.
They're getting up in the morning at 6:30 to watch a sports show. Hey, the Rams are pretty good.
Fair enough. In order to get a wild card in the NFC, I think you're probably going to need, like you did last year, 11-plus wins, and I think the Rams are better than them. So I think you can have a successful season in San Francisco without making the postseason. You got to keep in mind, up until Jimmy G took over, this was a team that was competing for the number 2 pick of the draft before they went on that 5-game winning streak. I think 8 or 9
How many games
wins.
did they win in a row just in the season?
5 straight.
Yeah, after you win 5 straight games, you're thinking about getting into the playoffs.
Okay.
An NFL team.
All right. Hey, how important is a good night's sleep? Very important if you're Klay Thompson, apparently. So in a recent podcast, Kevin Durant let us in on a little secret. Klay slept through practice the day before he went off for 60 points against the Pacers last season. Nick, how much more impressive does that make Klay's 60-point game?
Man, here's the thing. If you were to tell me NBA player's going to sleep through practice and his teammates are not going to be that surprised, not going to be that angry, and just laugh about it like, it's Klay, I would have guessed it was Klay Thompson. Like, Klay is known. What do you always say, CC? He's the coolest guy on the Warriors.
Oh, definitely.
The chillest guy on the Warriors, I might say. Listen, he talked about it in the podcast. I listened to it. He's like, we called Klay, and we're like, what happened? He's like, man, when I woke up, I was an hour and a half late already. I figured I might as well just get some more sleep. And then he dropped 60 points in, I believe, 29 minutes the next night. I don't think there's many guys in the league that can do that. Klay Thompson's one of them.
It's an impressive thing, especially because you know your schedule. And you get anxiety to be able to come out the next night. But I'm not surprised with Klay. I'm not surprised, though. Of all the Warriors, of their 3 stars, that was the one that you said, one of them overslept, next night got 60. I've been like, that's probably Klay.
Yeah. The oversleeping is the context.
Yeah, KD would have had one of his Twitter accounts wake him up.
Hey, finally, we're talking Tiger Woods. So the Masters starts on Thursday. The buzz starts today with Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson being paired together for a practice round. Tiger will be looking to take home his 5th green jacket. What are fair expectations, CC, for Tiger heading into Augusta?
I know Tiger Woods. The fair expectations for him would be to take home his 5th green jacket.
Yeah.
And the reason why is he knows this golf course. This is his favorite golf tournament of all. He's won it 4 times. The golf course sets up for his skill if he can hit his driver. Now, listening to Freddie Couples do an interview after yesterday's practice round with Tiger Woods, Tiger's made a couple of different changes in his equipment leading up to this event. He struggled with his driver. He struggled with his 3-wood as far as can he hit those things from right to left compared to hitting them left to right, because on Augusta, the par 5s, that's what you have to do. He's put a lighter shaft in both of those. Freddie said on the first tee, if you know Augusta National, he carries it over the first bunker, which is about a 305 carry. That was his first swing of the day. He said that's the most impressive ball striking that he's seen Tiger Woods in a long, long time. So hearing that, knowing how he's played, knowing inside how much they love this course, and be able to come back. This is not a comeback like his previous comebacks at the Masters. This is Tiger Woods is returning healthy. Yeah. Returning he's not just returning to golf. He's played a few tournaments leading up to this, which I believe will get his nerves ready for the weekend. Tiger Woods should be the favorite at Augusta in 2018.
Listen, you pointed out the Fred Couples interview, so I listened to it. Hearing a guy that's obviously, I mean, he seems like he is something of a fan of Tiger Woods, but a pro, an all-time great, talk about him in these terms is exciting. Now I know his former coach, Hank Haney, came out and said, the idea that Tiger's even one of the top 10 favorites is ridiculous. There's some bitterness there in my eyes. When you watch what Tiger did over the last month, when you watch him come in second with a putt to force a playoff at the Valspar, that was a tournament he couldn't score in the par fives, and he still did that well. Then you watched him the following weekend in one of the toughest fields, where dominate on the par fives, and if not for an out-of-bounds shot on the fourth, the final hole of the tournament, he was potentially going to make a charge up the leaderboard where Rory ended up running away with it, but Henrik Stenson, right, Rory ended up being great, but at the time, it looked like Tiger could go get it. Cece, where are the scoring holes at Augusta, primarily? The beginning or the end of the 18?
On the back nine.
On the back nine. That's another reason this is great for Tiger, is because we know that Tiger's first hole of a tournament, first hole of a round, particularly first hole of a tournament, doesn't always go great for him. That first drive, first shot, if you blow an opportunity at a scoring hole early, if one of the easier holes is the first hole, that's not great for Tiger. But once he's in a rhythm, once you get to holes 14, 15, 16, he's in a rhythm, that sets up brilliantly for him. And, Cece, what you've talked about, his erratic nature with the drivers, Augusta's a little more forgiving.
Very forgiving.
Because of how wide the fairways are. Like, all these things, I know it's rose-colored glasses, but for all those actual golf reasons, I think he should absolutely be near the top of the favorites, if not the favorite.
Can you imagine if Tiger Woods, having gone through everything he's been through in the last couple of years, comes back to win his 5th Masters? Can you imagine what that would do for golf?
Yeah, I see what it's doing for golf. It's got us watching. When Tiger Woods shows up to a tournament, twice as many people are watching that event, and there is a reason. But, as Nick said, we're watching something historic here.
Yeah.
There's never been a PGA Tour player have a fused lower back, and that's where Tiger Woods is, and I expect him to win another major this year, and I'm hoping it's this Sunday.
Oh, that'd be so amazing.
All right, new topic now. So at the start of the basketball season, the Warriors were the overwhelming favorites to win it all. Overwhelming. Now with injuries up and down that roster, not so much. According to major sports books, the Rockets and Warriors both have the same odds to win the NBA title. Both teams sit at 1 and 2 in the Western Conference, so that just adds to the drama. Nick, are these teams really that even?
Well, right now they're not even. Right now the Rockets are better than them. Like, just listen, right now the Rockets played 41 games with their best 3 players, Harden, CP3, and Clint Capella. They are 39-2 in those games. To beat the Rockets in a series, you're going to have to beat them 4 times. Assuming those top 3 guys are playing, you're going to have to do something in a 7-game stretch that has not been done, it's been done half as many times in a 41-game stretch. But what this tells me, because this was shocking to me, that I saw that the general Vegas sportsbook consensus now is Rockets-Warriors, even odds. But depending on where you shop the line, it could be a little different, but basically even odds. What this tells me is Vegas thinks what Chris Broussard thinks is the case, what Chris Carter thinks is the case, and what I have dismissed as a possibility, that the Warriors could possibly get got in the first round. They are baking that into the number, that the Warriors, without Steph Curry in the first round, that the Rockets might not have to beat them. Because what the doctors are telling is that Steph should be fully healthy come round 3 of the playoffs. We know that Durant and Clay and Draymond Green, those injuries are not ones you're worried about a month from now. I don't even think they're really worried about those injuries right now. Clay is back. I mean, their guys are back. What this is telling me is, because I do think if the Rockets and the Warriors face in the Western Conference Finals, Vegas would say the Warriors are favorites whether they should be or not. Vegas thinks, the public thinks, that the Warriors are vulnerable in round 1. That a series for them without Steph Curry, even with a healthy Kevin Durant, even with the rest of their roster, that they could lose in round 1, and they don't think that about Houston, and that's fascinating to me.
I'm surprised for a different reason. I'm surprised that Houston is not the favorite more so than Golden State.
Wow.
I don't think that they should be even money. I know that Vegas is giving the respect to the Warriors, but Houston has been more consistent. Steph is out with an MCL. This is week number 2, and he could be out as much as 6 weeks. So for me, even if he does come back, I know he's not going to be 100%. Now, when the doctor tells you come back between 2 and 6 weeks, he's talking about for a normal person.
Right.
A normal person, 2 to 6 weeks. He's not saying for you to be playing championship basketball, to be in a highly contested sporting event. No, that is not baked in there. So I think Houston should be the favorite over Golden State. I don't think their odds should be even.
Cece, do you think that Steph, whenever he comes back, is not that he's not going to be back to 100% this season? Is that correct?
There's no one else we've seen with the MCL. KD talked about it. Steph, when he had it last time, that first week to 10 days, they are not healthy. Like, they are struggling. We're talking about the competition, the intensity of playoff basketball. Let's not lose sight of that. KD was out 6 weeks, and they'll tell you, they did not come back healthy. Why would we think Steph would come back healthy? Like, this is not a matter of, oh, this guy's a fast healer. We're talking about a ligament to your knee, the MCL.
Right.
So I do believe he will be hampered throughout the playoffs.
I have a question. If at the beginning of the season we said the Warriors, coming off the last couple of years that they've had, we're going to go into the playoffs without Steph Curry, is there any doubt that they'd still be as dominant?
Well, as dominant, they wouldn't be as dominant. But I think if in game 1 of this year, Steph Curry blew his ACL.
And he was out.
And he was out for the year. I think going into game 2, the Warriors still would have been the Vegas favorites. But that was before we knew what we know about Houston. Like, the other part of this is how great Houston has been.
Yeah, I think it'd be a little bit different because you have the whole season develop a different style for Golden State.
Right.
So it's hard to make that comparison because he is coming back, and they would be a different team.
So your hesitation about the Warriors is not so much that Steph's not in it, is that whole offense runs around Steph Curry, and they don't have enough time right now to game plan an entirely new offense if you don't think he's going to be 100%.
None of the teams, the top 2 teams in the East, the top 2 teams in the West, none of those teams can afford to lose a starter, let alone someone like Steph Curry. Like, I think that we're just losing sight of how good these players are. Steph's not healthy. Wow, that's going to drastically affect the Warriors. Harden, if he wasn't healthy, it would drastically affect Houston.
But the reason that people feel differently about the Warriors is none of those other teams, and in fact no other team in the history of the league, has as their second option an MVP.
It doesn't matter. In this, it's still not enough talent to win a championship. That's the reason why they went out and got KD.
I agreed, which is why if we knew Steph was out for the year, out for the playoffs, this would not surprise me. But the fact that people are now wondering, is it enough talent to even get to the conference finals? Do you need a fully healthy Steph Curry to get through rounds 1 and rounds 2? That's crazy to me.
I just think we shouldn't analyze, oh, they have 4 All-Stars, they have Hall of Famers. I don't believe that. When you have someone who runs the team, if Chris Paul was not available, what would we think Houston's chances were? They got no chance. All right, so how would we be able to lose the point guard, Damian Lillard? They got no chance. They might not have a chance with Damian Lillard, but when you lose the guy who runs your offense, the most prolific offense that we have seen, especially in this 4-year window that they've played, they don't have enough time to adjust to that.
All right, let's break there. Guess what? The NFL draft is coming up. Is Josh Rosen too much of a millennial to be successful?
What
in the
about
NFL
all the
as
other
a
millennials
quarterback?
playing in the league?
Somebody thinks
Everyone in the league's
That's next. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by Chris Canty. Canty,
What up,
how you
big man?
doing?
Good to see you, brother.
What's good? I'm good, Jenna. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing really well.
So you got the bright colors on.
Thank you. That is what I'm wearing.
Trying to bring some warmth.
Correct. That is what I am doing.
I appreciate that.
Do you see
What's
what's
happening?
happening?
I
here,
see exactly
Cece?
what she's doing right now.
I'm
not on board with it, Jenna.
I refuse.
I know what you're doing.
Jenna thinks this is her not being awkward because yesterday Chris Canty called her awkward, and then of course Jenna's
I was
attempt to
striking
not
up a
be awkward,
conversation.
She's as awkward as can be.
Chris Canty.
So,
We'll try
appreciate
again
you breaking
tomorrow,
that down.
Chris.
Well, I
Thank
got
you very
brother.
much.
No
Epic
problem.
fail. We'll try that again tomorrow. High five. The NFL draft is right around the corner. Still time for draft picks to slide up and down based on literally anything. For Josh Rosen, it's been an interesting process. So he's been called a lot, right? A little cocky, a little arrogant, a little too intellectual. Now he's being called, wait for it, a millennial. Former UCLA coach Jim Mora Jr., who coached Rosen for 3 years, had this to say about his former quarterback, quote, he needs to be challenged intellectually so he doesn't get bored. He's a millennial. He wants to know why. Millennials, once they know why, they're good. Rosen tweeted this out. Why? Shrug emoji. Hashtag why. So, Chris, what did you make of Jim Mora's comments?
Well, I didn't understand where he was coming from in terms of when he said millennial and saying that he needs to be challenged, or or I guess you got to engage him in this way. I think most professional athletes need to be challenged and stimulated in that way. You have to get them engaged so you can bring the best out of what that player might have to offer in terms of being able to produce on the field. So when you talk about a quarterback like Josh Rosen asking the questions, why are we doing things a certain way, I don't have an issue with that. To me, a player that wants to get to the why is going to have a better chance of being able to match his physical gifts and his skill sets and have that translate to production on the field. That's what it's all about. I don't need a guy that gets to the line of scrimmage and he panics because the look that the defense shows him on Sunday isn't what the coaches drew up for the scout team on Wednesday and Thursday. I need somebody that's capable of being able to think on their feet. And Josh Rosen strikes me as a quarterback that's capable of doing that based on what I saw on the college game tape and from what his coach is talking about him now. So I like the fact that a player wants to know why he's being asked to do certain things. I don't need a guy that's a robot on Sundays.
Yeah, a few things from what he said. I'm not a millennial, thank God, but I need to be challenged. I want to know why, and I need to be challenged even when I was in college. When I was in the pros, I need to be challenged. I'm not a millennial. I don't believe that they absolutely have to come together. What I think is going on with UCLA is I think that collectively that Jim Moore is part of the Josh Rosen team. And there was speculation that Josh potentially didn't want to go to Cleveland. I believe this is part of it. So the coach comes out with comments that would, because in deciding if he was going to go pro, the coach had a lot to do with it. There's no one in UCLA's program has more experience with pro football than Coach Moore. He also used to be a defensive back coach in the National Football League. We used to compete against him every summer with the New Orleans Saints, so I'm very familiar with Coach Moore. He is a great evaluator of talent. He does know what he's talking about, but I believe this is just a little bit of smoke for them to be able to get off the Cleveland team without them saying he does not want to go there, without him not looking bad, because he made a suggestion. I believe Cleveland should draft Sam Darnold. Now, why would he say that? I believe he loves Josh. I believe he believes Josh is a franchise quarterback. But Josh can't say he don't want to be in Cleveland, but I can. As a former NFL coach, the son of an NFL coach, I can say those things, and I can take the heat. So I believe collectively their group has decided he doesn't want to be in Cleveland. And the coach enunciated some of that by saying the things that he said. NFL players do want to be challenged. NFL players, from my understanding, they want to learn. They want to get better. And to get better, you need to find out why. And most NFL coaches, which I believe they're the best coaches, they are far superior than college and high school coaches. That's why they're in the NFL. They get to the why part, and that's how they make the players better.
And we got to be fair here and not forget who has Josh Rosen been the whole time we've known him, up until his name's called on draft day. He's a college athlete. A student athlete is what we're told. What is college about? Learning, asking questions, figuring things out, being intellectually curious outside of what your career vocation is going to be. I was a lot more scattershot. I think most of us were a lot more scattershot in college than we were once we became professionals. Once you become a professional, you are much more focused. It doesn't mean your brain turns off. It doesn't mean you stop having other things that interest you, but it does mean you now have a job that you're paid to focus your primary attention on. Like the idea that the curiosity is a bad thing, I just reject in basically every line of work except for, I guess you could argue, the military, where you just have, you know what I mean? You're supposed to just take orders, follow the chain of command. Cece, you sent me a video, Josh working with Aaron Rodgers. It was actually, I think it was like a Lincoln commercial, essentially, but it was long form, and he's doing a lot of things. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is Aaron is describing, I think it was back shoulder throws, but whatever he's describing, I've seen countless videos like this or instances like this where a pro is talking to a potential draft pick, and he says to him, so you understand what I mean? And the guy just goes, yeah. Yeah, and you know he doesn't actually understand it. He's just going along with it. What did Rosen do? Rosen actually stopped and said, wait, why? Explain it to me. I want that because he is going to be a rookie. He does have a lot to learn. Like someone that has a thirst for learning, I think is a positive, particularly at that position.
I just wonder, Chris, if the other part of this that bothers people is that he has a lot of outside interests. as opposed to maybe the intellectual side of it or the curiosity side of it? Because there's this mentality in football that you want football players, especially young football players, to need, eat, breathe, desire, crave football, and not have football be like, I love football, but I love like 1,000 other things as well. Like when you come in, you want these guys to be, and you talked about this, Cece, completely committed to the craft wholeheartedly so that you coaches can coach you, so that you can learn, so that you can be the best you can be. And I wonder if putting it out there that Josh Rosen has all these outside interests, it makes it appear as if football is a hobby or his job as opposed to his lifeblood.
Well, here's the thing, Jen. I think people are concerned that a player might not be as committed if they're interested in other things outside of football, but I don't think that's true. There's nothing wrong with being a balanced individual. And so when I hear all of the things about Josh Rosen in terms of he's a free thinker and he likes to engage in conversations and stuff outside of topics that relate to football, I don't have a problem with that. I actually think that's a good thing to be a balanced person, because if you have somebody that's out of whack, so to speak, then you don't know that that person is going to be grounded enough to be consistent in his approach to his job. And I think that's the concern with a lot of teams that see guys with interest outside of football. Are you committed and do you love football versus is this something that you just you like the things that come along with it? So I think that's the question that has to be answered. But you don't know that unless you get into the interview process with Josh Rosen and have conversations.
Right. A player who went through a similar thing was Robert Smith at Ohio State. When he had a problem because he couldn't take a certain class because in his major, I think he was in pre-med at the time, was interested in being a doctor at Ohio State. The professor that was teaching the class in the spring, he could take that class, but he would have to miss some football practice. In Ohio State, we don't let players take classes after 1 o'clock because you're into the daily schedule. So Robert had a problem with that. So he had some of these same questions. Does he love football? Is he more interested in being a doctor? Is he more interested in his education? Is he too much of an intellectual? And this was a long time ago. So it's not as if we haven't had this question before. Most of these people, though, they're not in the NFL locker room. They don't realize there's a lot of bright people in there. There's a lot of bright coaches. And the more you can learn, the more you can learn does not put a ceiling on your potential. Regardless of what your ability is athletically, if you're not a learned person, your ceiling is limited to what you can be. The greatest athletes that we have seen, they also happen to be the people that are learned in their craft. And that elevates them above people who are just talented. Everyone in the league is talented. So what's going to separate you? Your ability to be able to learn something and apply it and apply that skill to your game. The locker room is full of people just like Josh Rosen. They just don't have the same background. They don't come from wealthy families. They don't have the things that he had going for him when they got to this point in their life.
And I happen to reject the premise that you can just lump millennials into one group and say this is how millennials are. But let's just say that's correct, because I know a lot of people feel the way, oh, these millennials. Well, guess who Josh Rosen's going to be playing with? A bunch of millennials. Millennials are people born from 82 to 04. Like, basically everyone in the league, Aaron Rodgers' age or younger, is in that group. So if it is a lot of people he's going to be playing with that are intellectually curious, do have outside interests, that makes him relatable to them. We're seeing guys throughout with the more socially conscious athlete now, we're seeing guys show you that while they are extraordinary athletes and very dedicated to their craft, they do have outside interests. Like, to me, that makes you relatable as a role.
Right now in the NFL locker room, it's more geared towards the millennials and how they teach things, how everything's applied, how everything is downloaded on the computers.
Yeah.
It is not fit for the generation before them. The NFL right now is fit for millennials, and that's why the league will continue to prosper.
Well, Chris Canty, I have no outside interest other than this show. This is literally the only thing
that's not true.
That is 100% true.
You are a gym rat.
You're right. I have two interests.
Exactly. We'll be doing stuff related to the show.
2 interests. That's it. Just the gym and this show. Stop rolling
Dustin,
your eyes.
check it out.
Chris Carter. Stick around. Chris Canty coming up. Can Amari Cooper and the Raiders turn it around under John Gruden? It is the NFL offseason, and yet we have a lot of NFL season stuff to talk about. It's a great early April day.
A new paradigm in the NFL, it would appear. Trades are going to matter. Trades are going to happen. This was the one.
I like the culture of the NFL.
This was the one thing that it felt like the NFL lagged behind baseball and particularly the NBA. The off-season transaction, the hot stove part of it, and now it seems like, well, the most prominent team in the league is at the forefront of it. It's great.
Should we start there? What? Tell me.
Let's start there. You know who can't be traded?
Who can't be traded?
Me.
Oh, okay. No trade clause in his contract. Absolutely, and I would hold out.
All right, so let's
Jenna.
talk about it. I
Jenna.
can't be traded, CC.
No,
Patriots.
New England called me. I told them. They want
She's not available.
They was giving me 2 number 1s and Brady. I told them Brady ain't going to beat time. I'll still take Jenna.
Love you, Chris Carter. Patriots making moves this offseason. They giveth and they taketh. That's how trades work. Yesterday, they shipped receiver Brandon Cooks to the L.A. Rams in exchange for the 23rd overall pick. While the Pats move is interesting, what's really interesting is what's next in New England. They've got those 2 first-round picks, 5 picks in the top 95, plenty of draft ammo to move up or down. Are they rebuilding? Are they moving up to get a quarterback? Are they eyeing LeBron? So many questions that we need to wrap our smart little brains around. Chris Carter, I'll start with you. Let's start with what this means for the New England Patriots.
In the last year, New England, to me, I think it's very interesting that they've kind of changed their model. They've been far more aggressive as far as trades, draft picks, as far as acquiring players. Like they were, the only way I can kind of describe it is if they were in a hurry for the first time in the Belichick era. When I say in a hurry, it started last year when they traded for Brandon Cooks. That was one of the things that I thought, I said, wow, that's not typically a trade that they would make because Brandon Cook, he's in the second to last year of his contract then. Are they going to give him a contract extension, given the numbers of what wide receivers are making? Like, that to me was and then they went after the kid from Carolina. You know, the defensive lineman.
Coney Ely.
Yeah,
they didn't pan out. They traded a draft pick for him. They go out and they sign Stephon Gilmore to a big money deal. They did a lot of things.
Then even during the season, we talk about the Garoppolo thing. Like they got off Garoppolo for a second-round pick.
They get off Dorsett for. They get off Brissett for Dorsett
from Indianapolis. So for me, it's like, wow, why are they rushing? And now to see that they've gotten off of Brandon Cook, well, you would seem to think that he had a successful season. Well, this is what happened. He's in the last year of his contract. And the way New England does business, if you don't agree before that last year comes up, you're going to have problems. That's the reason why it was so problematic with Malcolm Butler. Malcolm Butler was in the same situation. He was in the last year. They offered him extension. He didn't take it. And now they couldn't trade him, but he ended up having not the type of ending to a season, and they end up losing him for free. They don't like losing players for free. That's why they got off of Brandon Cook. Now the Rams are going to have to make a decision last year of his contract. What do we do? Do we sign him to a contract extension, which I believe that they will? But for me, New England, it seems like they're in a rush to win now. And I'm not using that from a negative connotation. They're just in more of a rush than I've ever seen them. And I think that they're trying to take advantage of this Tom Brady window, but they have a lot of other things going on. Last year at this time, I was so confident in New England of what type of team I thought they were going to put on the field. Right now, I'm not saying I just don't know. I don't know who's going to be their left tackle, and they haven't depended on draft picks like this. That, to me, that's what it means. Are they going to depend on all these draft picks to play with Tom Brady at 40? I don't think so. I don't think they're done willing and dealing. They have relied on veteran players. It's a system built for veteran players, and now they have all these draft picks. You know, so what are they going to do with them?
All right, so my initial immediate takeaway when I saw this is we now know they are not trading Rob Gronkowski.
Yes.
You cannot. You already lost Amendola. You've now traded away Brandon Cooks. Julian Edelman's coming off an ACL. You're not trading Rob Gronkowski. My second immediate...
You got him 2 years on the books
right,
at a good number.
He's not a guy that you need to agree to a contract extension to. You probably feel like after these 2 years of Gronk, he might be done playing football. We have the hammer of the franchise tag, which never been used on him. So Gronk is either going to be retired or a Patriot this year. I'm confident in that. My second reaction was, man, there's no team in sports better at the transaction than the Patriots. Now, they miss on draft picks somewhat often. Really almost in line with league average. Like, they haven't figured out the draft. But what they did with Brandon Cooks was they traded away the 32nd pick for Brandon Cooks, got a year out of him, and then traded him away for the 23rd pick. So they got 1 year of service and moved up 9 spots in the draft. So they're very good at this part of it. And my final thought was Nate Solder. and I know I brought up Nate Solder when we were talking about Gronk, and people, it's not sexy to talk about offensive linemen, but we know they've had Matt Light and Nate Solder at their tackle position for the entirety of the Brady era, for the left tackle position. Barring injury, those have been the two guys. They were in a position where he signed somewhere else in free agency. There is not a free agent available I think they are comfortable signing at this point in the market to be their left tackle. So I think they wanted more draft ammunition. There's a couple of guys I think they're targeting. One of them, I'd be surprised if they're targeting Orlando Brown, but Colton Miller, he's 6'8". He's out of UCLA. Solder, 6'8". Also, Mike McGlinchey, a 6'8" tackle out of Notre Dame. I would imagine the Patriots are saying, we have to leave the first round of this draft with our left tackle. We now have more ammunition to make sure that happens.
I like you looking at it that way because right now, if you look inside the New England Patriots in their draft board, in the draft room, they have a board in there. I guarantee those two names are way, way up there.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Tom Brady, what they're trying to do, what they do offensively, I mean, they're going to keep the tight end in now and have him block him and help out for that left tackle? Or do they get the best prospect in college football and bring him into the fold? Yeah,
but let me ask you a question. What do you think Brady's reaction was? Because I bet Brady's reaction last year when they traded for Brandon Cooks was, this is awesome. Like another weapon. But now when he sees Amendola leave, he sees Deion Lewis leave, who he likes out of the backfield, and now he sees Brandon Cooks leave for something he can't touch. They didn't trade him for a player. They traded him for a pick. What do you think Brady's reaction to that is?
Wherever he was, he couldn't have been happy. Because now, as a veteran, Now, Tom gave us, he gave us a little insight into his life in Tom versus time. Now Tom's got to bend over backwards for another wide receiver. Whatever his personality is. Belichick and them, they don't care. They're going to bring in someone. And Tom's got to open himself up to learn this guy, try to bring this guy up to speed compared to, what about some carryover from last year? Now, to me, I don't believe Chris Hogan, who's on their roster, is the answer. So New England, are they going to put another young wide receiver, which they've missed in the draft, or did they see something in Philip Dorsett, the former first-round pick from the University of Miami, with Indianapolis, who they, in the Jacoby Brissett trade, did they see something in him in a year with him? Because what it tells me is they did not see enough in Brandon Cook in this year to be able to sign him and keep him going forward.
And they did, just real quick, just want to clarify, they did talk to him about an extension, but the money he wanted was not in line with what they wanted to give him.
Don't you think it's interesting that they put so much stock in what Brady thinks to the point where Robert Kraft invited him into a meeting last year and he basically orchestrated the whole getting Jimmy Garoppolo out of there, but he can't get a wide receiver to stay 2 or 3 years that he's comfortable with? Just a thought. Secondly, here's my question to you. So now they get rid of Nate Solder, we talked about, and Amendola, and Deion Lewis, and Malcolm Butler. Which is the most important position that they need to fill now?
Well, right now I think it's left tackle. I don't think there's a...
You got a 40-year-old quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's left tackle. But I also think when you talk about those guys, I think it is worth noting that every single guy we just mentioned, including and add Brandon Cooks to the list, were guys they tried to re-sign, guys they would have liked to bring back, but the price became too steep. And I know, CC, like, there is sometimes, if anyone's ever been to an auction, okay, whoever wins an auction for an item, they almost by definition have overpaid because they have raised their paddle when everyone else says that's too much. So almost by definition, you've overpaid. The Pats refuse. Mangini talks about this. They have a walk-away number, and they walk away. And that has served them very well. It's one of the reasons they don't ever have these bad contracts that are killing their cap.
They do not have one bad contract on their roster.
Well, that's why you say they're so good at transactions.
Right. But there is a downside to that. The downside to that is sometimes you run out of players. Sometimes all of a sudden it's like, man, we'd love to have Danny Amendola back, but not at $6 million a year. We'd love to have Brandon Cooks back, but not at $14 million a year. We'd love to have Nate Solder back, but not at $11 million a year. And then it's like, oh, so we didn't sign any bad contracts, but now there's only bad football players left to sign to good contracts. Like, that is the risk that you run. So we'll see what they do with it.
Is there a team that has done more with less? Is there a team that has gone farther with other people's, if you want to call it trash, that they turn into treasure than the New England Patriots?
No one. No one's done.
So I don't think they're as concerned. All right, coming up.
They got a lot of conversion to be doing.
A lot of conversion.
Yeah.
A lot of trash to treasure conversion.
Yes.
Big Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday coming up. So don't make plans. Sit on your couch. Watch nothing but television because the question is Tiger showing signs he can win the Masters? What's next on First Things First?
This is the First Things First podcast. I'm Nick Wright, and before the show moves along, I want to tell you about today's show being brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring, posting your position to job sites and waiting and waiting and waiting for the right people to see it? ZipRecruiter knew there was a smarter way for you, so they built a platform that finds the right job candidates just for you. ZipRecruiter learns what you're looking for, identifies people with the right experience, and invites them to apply to your job. These invitations have revolutionized how you find your next hire. In fact, 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. And ZipRecruiter doesn't stop there. They even spotlight the strongest applications you receive, so you never miss a great match. The right candidates are out there. ZipRecruiter is how you find them. Businesses of all sizes trust ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. Right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/FTF. That's ZipRecruiter.com/FTF. ZipRecruiter.com/FTF. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
All right, here we go. Moving on to the Masters now. We already know it's a tradition unlike any other. And if Tiger Woods can somehow pull this off, it could be the comeback story unlike any other. Woods has won this tournament 4 times, most recently back in 2005. But then a sex scandal, and then back surgeries, and then an arrest, and then lots of pain. But now he is back, and he says he feels great. And Vegas says he's the favorite this weekend. Woods spoke about returning to form.
I'll be honest with you, it is crazy. I didn't think, I thought prior to the fusion surgery that that's pretty much it. I'll have a nice, comfortable, and great life, but I'll never be able to swing the club like I used to. Speed-wise, there's no way. Lower back fusion. But for some reason, I don't have any pain. Yes, I'm much tighter, but I don't have any pain, and I've had to really work on strength in different ways. And for some reason, it's come back. I wish I could tell you, I wish I knew, but all of a sudden I have this pop in my body and my speed's back and my timing.
Well, those are lethal things to happen to Tiger Woods if you're the competition watching that press conference. CC, what does Tiger need to do if he is, in fact, going to compete and then go on to win the Masters?
I think first people should get an understanding because of who he is. We said, okay, what's the expectations? They asked Tiger yesterday, and he said to win his 5th green jacket. But, you know, he mentioned one word that I think people should try to understand before you watch the Masters this week, and that was miracle. There's never been in the history of the PGA Tour a player play with a lower fused back. Tiger Woods, and I know through talking to people that are on his team, his agent, I mean, it was on the board. He would not play professional golf again. Now, he said, I wouldn't be able to swing a golf club like I did before. So he knew he'd be able to play golf with his kids, something that's very, very important to him. But to be able to compete, he thought that was totally over with. I mean, he has gone through such a dark part in his life in trying to get back healthy. He talked about yesterday falling down multiple times and just not being able to get up because he lost a feeling in his lower back, which led to nerve down his leg, which his leg would give out on him, and he didn't know when it was going to happen. He talked about not being able to get out of bed, and now we're talking about he realistically has a chance to win the Masters. Okay, I just wanted to just say all that first. Now, this is what Tiger Woods got to do. There's 8 holes at Augusta National that are by the designer. It's set up to go right to left.
Dog leg left, right?
Yes. So what they do, the undulation, TV doesn't give it a true understanding of how hilly it is. But typically on these holes that go right to left, there's mounding. There's huge hills out on the right. And these pros are this good, between 270 to 290 yards. They can hit the ball with a spin off of those hills that gives this carom. this carom effect where the ball bounds further. So you'll see guys drive the ball 370, 380 because of the way it's built, the undulation, and they're that kind of good. Tiger's been driving the ball left to right. All right, he's got his distance back. He's got his speed back. He's 34th on tour in distance, but he's about 200 as far as accuracy. So there's 8 holes. Hole number 2, hole number 5, hole number 8, hole number 9. Starting the back 9, hole number 10, hole number 13, par 5, hole number 14, and hole number 17. You have to be able to hit the ball right to left off the tee. Now, Tiger's made some adjustments. He's changed the shaft in his driver to a lighter weight fiberglass shaft, graphite shaft. He's typically using steel. He's gone to longer shaft. So he's trying to get used to the lighter weight and the length of it. He's done that in his driver and his 3-wood. So driving the ball, when you watch it, if Tiger drives the ball well, they are going to have a hard time beating him. It's also, this course is set up for older players with more experience. There's so many tricks. There's so many what they call local knowledge that you have to be able to understand. And the veterans, that's why this is the smallest field on tour. That's why there's only 20 golfers, I believe, that really
win it.
Yeah, it's not like the other tournaments.
It's a smaller field. There's only a few guys that really can win it because you have your guys that are grandfathered in because they've a lifetime exemption from winning it. You got your couple amateurs in it. There's only a few guys that can win it. And if people want to envision the mound CeCe's talking about, think back to CeCe, I bet, knows which hole it was. But famously, Tiger, pre-Tiger proofing of Augusta,
yes,
there was a 540-yard par 5.
Yes.
That he went driver wedge to the hole.
Yes.
And they said,
hole number 15.
Hole number 15. They said, okay.
The people of Augusta were embarrassed.
They said
how they set up the course.
Yeah.
With these new type of golf players, Tiger Woods in particular, we need to do something.
Okay, so let's just talk about what he has to do to win. To win, drive accurate. If he drives accurate and putts anything like we've seen him putt and his short game the last 2 times we've seen him at the Valspar and the tournament after, he will be in the top 4. And then if he's in the top 4, I like his chances. You got to keep in mind this year, 1 putt percentage, 3rd on the PGA Tour. Putts per round, 3rd on the PGA Tour. Scoring average, 5th on the PGA Tour. That's despite, as CeCe mentioned, driving accuracy, not in the top 200 on the PGA Tour. And the other thing I'm so excited about, go ahead, Jenna.
No, go ahead, finish.
The other thing I'm so excited about is this. We have not seen Tiger at the weekend of a major tournament since the Masters in 2015. We haven't seen him make a cut in the major since the Masters of 2015. I would be shocked if he doesn't make the cut, and I think he is positioned. Vegas might have him slightly overinflated, but I'd be shocked if he's not in position to win this thing.
I know we talk about reasonable expectations of him winning. I would love to know what success means, how successful, if for it to be a successful weekend where he has to get to, and who else is in contention that you think at this point he'll be competing with?
Success for us as golf fans would be Tiger finishing in the top 5, that he's in contention on the back 9 on Sunday. But this is Tiger Woods. And Tiger Woods won. It's like when you ask me, what about LeBron? I'm going with LeBron's expectations. That's not Tiger Woods' expectations. He says if I get myself in contention, he's expecting to win. So I'm telling you, expecting him to win is not outside of those possibilities.
You're pulling for Tiger. Give us a couple names that you think are good.
The reason why the 2018 Masters is special, not only because Tiger Woods is back, but it's also Dustin Johnson last year on the eve of the Masters, #1 player in the world, fell down in the property he was renting at Augusta. So he couldn't play in last year's tournament. He's back. He has the perfect type of game for Augusta. Jordan Spieth, if he wins this major, it would be the fastest to win 4 majors, faster than Tiger Woods, faster than Jack Nicklaus. Also, if you look at
defending champ Sergio
coming back. So there are so many other great stories there. Roy McIlroy, he could finish the winning all 4 majors.
Yeah, he'd have his own slam.
Yeah, so that right there, these storylines are tremendous. That's why it's going to be an exciting weekend.
And Tiger. Coming up, will LeBron cakewalk to the finals for the 8th straight season? That's next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, let's talk sports.
We know you don't want to talk about your
Stories to start
dancing.
morning. Deshaun Watson's. You're like, oh, your dancing's not fun, but I'll just talk about my dancing because as a middle-aged white man, my dancing is amazing.
First of all, I'm not middle. I don't know if any of those descriptors.
Deshaun Watson's fantastic
You're white?
rookie season.
Wait a second. Newsflash. Put that on the ticker.
Deshaun Watson's fantastic rookie season was cut short after 6 starts when he tore his ACL in practice. Head coach Bill O'Brien is not concerned about the quarterback bouncing back, saying, quote, he seems to have an instinct for being able to stay out of harm's way, although he didn't. CC, is there such a thing as injury-avoiding instincts?
Well, I mean, I just think if I had those superpowers before I got injured, well, my second time, this is not the first time I blew out my knee. This is the second time. I think that I would have probably had those. You push a button or something for those instincts when they kick in. I think he would have hit that button. He is a great athlete,
man.
But I'm telling you, man, injuries are like a silver bullet. I don't care who you are. When it hits you, like, it's going to kill you.
Listen, Deshaun Watson was one of the most exciting players in the league last year, and he only played a quarter of the season. I am hoping he stays healthy as can be. But, like, Cece, you were remarkably healthy for your entirety of your NFL career until your final season. Since
yes.
You broke your collarbone once. Mm-hmm. Was that skill or luck?
Well, I just believe a lot of guys get into collisions. Some guys come out of them. I believe it's a God-given ability. Other guys, it's not. It's just they're unfortunate.
Right.
You know, they're not as flexible in their hips. Their joints and stuff are a little bit tighter, but they're playing sports. Like, if you play it long enough, you practice long enough, you're going to get hurt.
I think Bill O'Brien's trying to speak this into existence because he's had enough of the Tom Savage experience.
Yeah, you have to be fortunate. I don't believe in luck, but I like fortune being on my side.
Okay.
Basketball now. Potential Rookie of the Year Ben Simmons led the Sixers to a win last night. That's 11 straight for Philadelphia. And he did so on a night they honored 76ers great Julius Erving with his very own statue. Dr. J complimented Simmons, saying, quote, he's a once-in-a-lifetime player. Nick, you agree with Dr. J's comments on Ben Simmons?
I agree with the gist of them. Now, as CC would say, do people know how long a lifetime is?
Like, forever?
So, is he once in a lifetime? No. But is he a guy that I think has, if he develops anything close to a reliable jump shot, does he have the ability to be one of the 2 best players in the league? Yes, he does. So if you consider that once in a lifetime, sure. Like, this guy has every part of the game is a B+ or better, except for shooting. We'll see if he develops the shooting.
Hey, Philadelphia, tell me something. When I got drafted by the Eagles, Julius Erving was playing across the street in the Spectrum. What took y'all so long to get a statue? I mean, what we do? It's 2018. I mean, forget about Ben Simmons. I mean, they made the man wait forever. Man, he'll say anything.
Man, that's a great point. They put up a statue of a fake athlete, Rocky, before they put up a statue of a real.
Yeah, he ain't beat nobody. I mean, the Doc, man, was the man.
That's a great take.
You know, Rocky 3 also wasn't such a great
Hey, there's a better version of Ben Simmons in Cleveland. It's
James Harden went off last night for 38 points, 10 rebounds, and 9 assists. Harden continues his strong MVP push, and former MVP and teammate Kevin Durant thinks there is only one option, saying, quote, just give it to him. It's his time to win it. CC, is Durant right about Harden?
Oh, he is right. And it's nice to get confirmation from one of the other great players in the world. You know, arguably number 2 in the world. KD's got it right. Harden should have won 1 or 2 already. But typically, things like this happen. His teams haven't had great success in the postseason. And we do this thing where we pick apart people's numbers. Oh, Russell Westbrook. Oh, then the triple-double ain't what it used to be because they're giving him rebounds. Okay, well, Steph Curry, he was the unanimous, so let's pick his game apart. Like, that's what we have done. James Harden deserves a 2018 MVP.
Listen, I understand LeBron's campaigning that he believes he's the MVP. I understand why LeBron feels that way. They might win the same amount of games this year, or even more games this year than they did last year with Kyrie. But every time LeBron seems maybe he could make this a race, then you're like, oh, what Harden end up doing last night? Oh, 38, 10, and 9. Like, I mean, listen, the team's going to win 65-plus games. He is going to finish the year top 3 scoring and assists. Like, to me, this is a no-brainer.
And if there were concerns coming into the season besides the postseason playing with Chris Paul and others sharing the ball, he's answered that.
Absolutely. Best team in the league, best player on the best team. Give it to him.
And finally, the Thunder fell to the Warriors last night, 111-107. Russell Westbrook had a strong performance, 44 points, 16 rebounds. But the 6th-seed Thunder have a lot of question marks heading into the playoffs. Nick, how do you evaluate the Thunder season?
Well, just one small critique I would have. When you say heading into the playoffs, I would call it trying to get into the playoffs. They are the 6th seed, so it sounds like they have a margin of error, but they are one whole game up on the 9 seed. You don't get in at the 9 seed, like, that's a tough loss for them. I understand they're playing Golden State. I understand KD had 24 in the first half, but you can't waste these 44, 16, and 6 nights from Russ. No. Listen, Paul George shooting less than 30% from 3 post All-Star. The story on George this year was best three-point shooting season of his career. That's gone away. Melo, speaking of three-point shooting, listen, man, maybe at 0 for 4 you keep shooting. I don't know if you keep shooting those threes at 0 for 8 because you finished 0 for 9. Like, this was a game I have said
that still could have been won.
That could have been won. And I've said for a few weeks now, the Thunder have had one clear blueprint to beating good teams since Christmas. Russ has to be awesome. Russ was awesome last night, and they blew an opportunity. And now I think they probably will make the playoffs, but it's absolutely in play. They draw this same team in the first round. Like, you need Paul George playing as well as possible, not 5 for 19. Like, this is, and I understand he's got to guard KD, so you got to recognize that's going to wear him down.
He's also said after the game he sort of lost his shot somewhere along the way. Can't seem to find it. Has to figure out how he's going to get back to that form again.
Well, don't have a lot of time to find it. Whatever he lost, he needs to find. Like, you can't, if you tell me Russ is going to have 44, 16, and 6. KD only had 10 in the second half after 24 in the first. You can win that basketball game. You needed to win that basketball game. So I'm like, OKC, this is concerning for them.
Yeah, I'm concerned for the OKC. You and I, probably about a month ago, there was a conversation about the most disappointing team. And I was like, man, you need to put the Cavs in the same conversation with OKC. You were on it. Like, this became a debate show. It's not a debate show. It became a debate on that. You're like, Chris, OKC is the most disappointing team. I'm like, man, you got to put the Cavs in the same breath as them. I mean, OKC, they have not done themselves any favors. And not only is the seeding going to be worse for them if they do get in, I mean, they have set themselves up to lose in the first round.
Yeah.
Which, how disappointing is that going to be after preseason hype of Paul George and Melo coming there, which would also end in Paul George leaving in free agency. Now, I believe there's 2 different conversations. Very disappointed in the Thunder, thought they would be better. And when you have that type of performance by Russ, where he is distributing, rebounding, taking the right types of shot, pushing the pace, you have to have someone as a 2 and a 3 to be able to help him out. This is what he did against the Warriors. Same type of performance. But when you don't have help, like we continue to say in this NBA, man, you can't win with 1 star. You can't win with 2 stars. You need at least 2.5 to 3 stars to be able to beat Houston, be able to beat Golden State. And right now, they don't have that. And I just believe this might affect, because last night I tried to put, because we can do this, I tried to put LeBron on the court. Because seeing Paul George, I don't know how excited LeBron would be to play with Paul George, the player he is right now. The Paul George I saw last night.
Right now or this season?
This moment.
The second half,
okay,
say after the All-Star break.
Okay.
Like, it became, with some of the rumors about Kawhi, would it be more entertaining to maybe potentially partner up with Kawhi compared to Paul George? So, OKC, I got questions about. But Paul George, what it means for him long term, I believe this is going to affect him and affect his overall destiny and who ends up playing basketball.
And listen, they have to find a way to win their first round series. They won't do that if they're the 7 or 8 seed. You cannot last year win 47 games, losing 5 in the first round, add Paul George, forget the Melo part of it, but add him as well.
Yes.
And then not even get out of the first round.
Win 47 games, which is what they're on pace to do, and losing 5 in the first round.
If you make it to the playoffs.
You can't be the same team you were last year. You can't.
All right, let's talk about LeBron. We just discussed him a little bit. Wherever you fall on this guy, what you cannot argue is that when he's on the court, the Cavs can win, even when he's playing the best team in the East. Last night, his Cavs still not back at full strength, still without a starting rotation, still won, beating the Raptors 112-106. LeBron had 27 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. The Cavaliers have now won 9 of their last 10 games. LeBron James spoke on his team's future moving forward.
We don't know what we can become. We don't know. we have no idea. But right now we're playing good ball. We want to try to continue that. But we don't know what we can become. we have not been whole all year.
All right, Nick, did the Cavs erase any doubt that they are the favorites in the East, despite what these standings tell us?
Yeah, I mean, you said they played the best team in the East. I was wondering, was it an inter-squad scrimmage?
Hilarious.
Because they're the best team in the East.
They're the best record in the East.
Listen, they don't have the best record in the East. They're right now going to struggle. I mean, they're going to get to around 50 wins, same as last year, by the way. But you watch, for them, there has to be an answer to the question if it's not Cleveland. And so the question, what has to go through your mind if you're trying to make the case is, but like a former NBA GM who I have a ton of respect for, Bobby Marks, was trying to make the case to me on Twitter last night that there's reason to be concerned about the Cavs. Then tell me, if they're the question, who's the answer? Because I watched Toronto last night try to, OG Anunoby, rookie, you try to guard LeBron James. That's hilarious. Pascal Siakam, you guarded him and did a good job on him the last time you guys played when he went for 34 and 17. That didn't work out. All right, CJ Miles, you get a chance. LeBron looked like one of those cartoon characters when they put out the big steak in front of him with the saliva coming out when CJ Miles started checking him. So that's your triumvirate to go try to check LeBron James. So if it's not going to be them, who is it going to be? The Celtics? Well, if the Celtics were healthy, but they're not, and they're not going to be. The Celtics with Gordon Hayward and Kyrie and Marcus Smart, now that's a discussion. But that team has not existed but for 7 minutes all year. Philly, listen, I think Philly is the toughest matchup for them, but you simply don't go in the NBA from not making the playoffs to winning your conference. That's never how this goes, unless, like we saw the Celtics do it when they added KG and Ray Allen. That's an outlier. Usually there's a progression. Look at the progression the Thunder had. The Thunder went from not making the playoffs to facing to taking the Lakers to 6 in the first round, to the next year going to the Western Conference Finals against the Mavericks, to then making the finals. So who's the answer to the question if it's not Cleveland? You have LeBron playing offensively as well as he's ever played, and the point he made there is important. They have played 0 games this year with their actual lineup. So whatever we think they are right now, theoretically, and I believe they should be better once they are healthy, and George Hill should be back before the postseason. So, I mean, who are the favorites in the East? The team with LeBron has been the case for the last decade. See?
Just pause for silence. Nick Wright, you were right. That's something I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to teach you also.
Let me take it and I'll say it one more time, please.
Nick Wright was right about Cleveland. I was concerned. Jenna, you were concerned. And it's not as if we're not fans of LeBron's or fans of the Cavs. It was what was playing out in front of our eyes. I mean, multiple lineups. Kyrie, let's go back. Kyrie forces a trade. He wasn't happy. Forces a trade out of Cleveland. Man, LeBron hadn't played without no superstar like Kyrie. Like, how are they going to be able to get it done? And it's not our fault. Toronto, they are a better team. They're still just not as good as Cleveland. I mean, they got the best record at home. They got a great record on the road, 24 and 15. Their bench, it is deeper. The younger players, man, they are developing. But they still don't have no answer for the guy in Cleveland, in LBJ. And if he has a competent lineup with him, he has shown that you have to have an answer to him. And no one in the East has an answer to him unless it would be Philadelphia. And that would be not an answer to him, it would be Joel Embiid, who they wouldn't have an answer for. So no one in the East has an answer for LeBron. The only way you can fight that is to be able to have someone who is a once-every-generation type player in Joel Embiid. So to me, Toronto, these last 2 losses to Cleveland, these were critical. I mean, these are critical losses. And, Nick, you and I were talking last night, and I just believe that a team that is trying to be special, and if Toronto, if their goal is trying to win an NBA championship, bring that championship to Toronto the first time, you question some of the judgment of their leaders.
I don't love what Kyle Lowry did. Kyle Lowry, I know you went to Villanova. I know you were part of what became this program. You are their biggest recruiting tool for 5 stars because you're the best pro they have. Yes. I get all that. You cannot be in San Antonio at a 9:20 East Coast tip-off for the national championship game the day before back-to-backs against Cleveland and Boston. And if you are going to make that decision, if you are going to say, I can be and don't worry about it, what was he, 5 points last night?
I had to steal you.
What you can't be is 2 for 11 with 5 points after that. Like, I saw it.
People won't be thinking about and looking about, but when you have the type of athletic maturity, like you know these two games, and Boston was only 2 games behind them going into last night's game.
With the tiebreaker, and you play them on a back-to-back tonight. Like, Boston ended up losing last night, which helps them to where they now have some breathing room for the 1 seed. But this all falls apart on you if at the end of the year, after this great season, oh, guess what?
Right.
We're not even the 1 seed. All this stuff. And I am not saying Kyle Lowry necessarily would have played better had he not been in San Antonio for the national championship.
We wouldn't have to look at it.
But it was the worst game of the year for him. And you have talked about, CeCe, how because the roster is so new in Cleveland, these guys, aside from LeBron and Love and JR and Tristan, don't have the repeated history of beating these dudes in the head. And so they don't have that confidence. And some of the bench players on Toronto, they also don't have the feeling of these guys always beat us. This was an opportunity after you blew a game 2 weeks ago, and your team leader is in San Antonio the night before and goes for 5 points, worst game of the year. I don't love that. I don't love it, Kyle.
All right, Cavs win 9 of their last 10 games. Can't believe Nick was right. Nick was right, said CeCe. Hey, coming up, let's go back to some football.
Best thing is we're on to the next subject. He's going to be wrong.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. My name is Jenna Wolf. His name is Hall of Famer Chris Carter. His name is Nick Wright. Happy Tax Day, everybody. Get everything done. Feel good? What?
No.
No? Well, you have time. I think you have till like the end of the day. So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Happy Tax Day.
Is that not? No? Is it nerdy that I get mine done so early that I can say Happy Tax Day to everybody?
No. That's what you should be doing.
Thank you.
Professional that you are. Yes, absolutely.
How's everybody?
Oh, a little shade thrown my way at 6:31 a.m. Like Chris Carter's done his own taxes in 30 years.
Wait, our own taxes?
No. Oh, okay.
No. Thank you, Jen.
I just went to see Justin a month ago, so I felt good about things.
Oh, shout out to Justin.
Shout out to Justin. Way to go. You guys see that game last night?
Couple good games
Far
last
different
night.
narrative than we saw the first time these two teams played. Let's
Absolutely
talk about it. Some drama in the NBA. Game 2 between the Sixers and the Heat. Sixers blew them out in Game 1, so this shouldn't have been an issue, except that it was an issue. Dwayne Wade of old stepped up, pouring in 28 points. Sixers fall to the Heat. First loss in over a month for them. No Joel Embiid again last night, still nursing a broken face. After the game, he Instagrammed, quote, "I'm expletive sick and tired of being babied." Remember, Joel Embiid hasn't played since March 28th and cleared the concussion protocol before Game 2, although he's still not medically cleared to play basketball. Brett Brown addressed the situation after the game.
He just wants to play basketball. He wants to be with his team. He wants to play in front of the fans. You know, he wants to see this through. And when he's not able to do that, he gets frustrated. And I respect his frustration. It's born out of competitiveness, and it's born out of him wanting to be with his team.
All right, we'll get to the game in a second. But, CeCe, let me start with you first. Do you think the Sixers are being too cautious with Joel Embiid?
No, I mean, he just passed the concussion protocol. Now, if we were talking about the previous injuries, his overall development, yeah, you might be able to say, yes, they've been very slow in letting him get to full strength before they let him get to back-to-back games. But, no, he's got a facial fracture, and he just passed the concussion protocol, I think, on Sunday. It's Tuesday. So, no, they're doing exactly what they should be doing. It's not, would we be asking this question if Philadelphia had handled their business last night? No, that wouldn't be the narrative to the game. Is Philadelphia, their handling of Joel Embiid, they're up 2-0. Is that? No, that wouldn't even be part of the storyline. But because they lost, and Joel Embiid says, like any other competitive athlete, I wish I could be out there. And that competitiveness is not just based on what he's done this season, but it's his lack of being involved with his team the last 4 or 5 years. What did he do at Kansas? He was injured. He couldn't achieve it. He couldn't go to NCAA. He couldn't dominate the way he went. What did he do coming into the NBA? He had to sit out. Yes, they've been very cautious as far as and slow to let him get back onto the court. And then now they're having the best season they've had in a long, long time in Philadelphia, getting them back into the playoffs, winning 17 in a row. Who wouldn't want to be involved in that? So No, Joel Embiid is doing what he's supposed to do. As an athlete, he's frustrated because it's prime time, and it's time for him to shine. He's not able to be there with his teammates, and the organization is doing what's in the best interest of Joel Embiid, and they have done it the right way. People question him. They've questioned him for years. I support Philadelphia in what they're doing with the time frame of Joel getting back onto the court.
And listen, I understand why people initially were skeptical about how cautious they were with Embiid. He missed his first 2 seasons. 2 seasons missed. Year 3, he played 31 games. And then all of a sudden this year, they were like, he's not going to play back-to-backs. People thought he might not play more than 50 games. And now he's going to either come in first or second in Defensive Player of the Year. He's one of the best players in the league already. And by the way, that process, to use a bit of a buzzword, has been proven to be the right one for them. They were worried Joel Embiid could become Greg Oden. The history of guys that big with that type of injury is terrible across NBA history. That's why coming out of Kansas...
Yeah, not only Oden, but also Sam Bowie was drafted the same year Michael Jordan was drafted in front of Michael Jordan. Before him, Bill Walton. Big guys with bad feet. It's not a great combination.
Yao Ming, like the guys who have had Hall of Fame level careers cut short that we weren't able to see their full everything from them. So like the other aspect here that people have to, I think, recognize is when this happened, we were told 2 to 4 weeks. And I know sports fans and athletes as well always focus on the first number. If it's 4 to 6 weeks, we're like, so what's happening in 4 weeks? Right. If it's 2 to 3 months, what's happening in 2 months? 2 to 4 weeks, we're like, 2 weeks. 2 weeks is the start of the playoffs. Tomorrow will be the 3-week mark. So tomorrow we are just halfway through the window. So the Sixers saying we are going to be cautious with our guy has been, up to this point, the right thing to do. And people do need to recognize, when you mentioned coming out of Kansas, Cece, there's a reason he went 3rd in the draft instead of 1st. He was clearly the most talented guy. People were concerned about his health. I know this is a different type of injury. This isn't a foot injury. It's a facial fracture. But you don't want to rush a guy back, and he's never played with the mask. They're like, he can do shooting. Can he get bumped? Hassan Whiteside, can he deal with a couple elbows? Can he deal with the things you're going to have to deal with in a playoff game?
All right, so let's talk about how he factors into what happened last night. Sixers won big Game 1. We assumed this was going to be a rout. It almost looked easy. They didn't have Joel Embiid. Game 2, they still don't have Joel Embiid. Everything looked different. It seemed like it was because of Dwayne Wade. What did you see last night? What was the difference?
Well, last night in watching the game, it made me go back to what were we thinking before the series started. And we thought that they might struggle a little bit, especially without Joel Embiid. But they come out, they blitz Miami in the 3rd quarter, because a lot of people forget at halftime the Sixers were losing. So Miami did match up with them over a good part of that game, but people saw the end result. Now they start talking about looking ahead, because this is a young team. They start looking ahead, start potentially talking about a sweep, and then they ran into Dwayne Wade. So you can criticize Philadelphia for not being able to get it done, but Dwayne Wade had one of the historic performances that we've seen in the playoffs, the best that we've ever seen from a Heat player coming off the bench, and without that, they don't win that game. So that's what I saw, a young team who ran into a guy who's got championship pedigree, championship experience, and he gives them a lift like they've never had in all the Heat playoff games. And I'm telling you, as a season ticket holder for a long time for the Heat, to say Dwayne Wade played better than anyone that's ever come off the bench, that's the type of performance it took to Miami to get the series tied up 1-1.
All right, so from the Sixers' perspective, I'm going to get to D. Wade in a moment, because everything CeCe said is correct there, and I think we can amplify it a bit even more. This series should be 1-1. Just look at the three-point shooting. In Game 1, the Sixers were unconscious, and they won the game going away. Yesterday, they couldn't hit a shot, and they were trailing for the the entirety of the second half. They had one run that D. Wade ended, which we'll show you how he ended it in a second. But, you're 17 of 27 from 3, then you're 7 of 36 from 3. Guess what? Usually, things kind of, regress to the mean. They did it real quick. So this series should be 1-1. And the Sixers are not a drastically better team than Miami when Joel Embiid's not out there.
No.
Like, it's about a coin flip if Joel Embiid's not out there. The reason I think people were so confident after Game 1 is people were believing, well, Embiid will definitely be back at least for Game 3. The Sixers just blew him out of the water. But now we don't know if he's going to be back for Game 3. We also saw that Justice Winslow can guard Ben Simmons a little better than we saw in Game 1. There were some things there. But the story's different this morning if the Sixers execute that comeback. They were down 16. They end up going on a run. They cut it to 2 points. And D. Wade had a brilliant first half. But then he had a quiet second half. In the first half, he was 8 of 9 for 21 points. The one missed shot was a 2-for-1 three-pointer that he took just because the math said you should. Wasn't a good shot. Or wasn't a high percentage shot, I should say. And so let's show the audience how Dwayne Wade saved this game. The Sixers have cut it to 4, or cut it to 2. They have all the momentum. There's 4 minutes left. There's D. Wade stripping the ball and then getting a dunk. Now it's a 4-point game. Next time down the court, who orchestrates the play? D. Wade from 32 feet away with a brilliant pass after stepping away from the pick. Next time down the court, now you're up 6. You miss a layup. Here comes D. Wade crashing in, getting the rebound over a bigger Robert Covington, leading to a Dragic jump shot. Timeout, 8-point game, and it wasn't quite game over, but it felt like game over. D. Wade burst onto the scene in 2003 with a triple-double in the Elite Eight to take Marquette to the Final Four. 2003. It is now 2018, and he was the best player on the court in an NBA playoff game. Like, that is why he's one of the 4 best players in the history of his position, why he's one of the 20 best players in the history of the franchise, and why I'm glad that he gets this final chapter in Miami, that he did go back to Miami, that Cleveland did trade him, and he gets to do this for them. That was an awesome story last night.
All right, this series is tied up. Game 3 is Thursday in Miami. Let's see what happens. Coming up, we'll talk some football. Is the Belichick-Brady controversy a bigger deal than we once thought? We'll talk about that next on First Things First. A little football now, new topic because it's on a new script. Is it possible that the untouchable dynasty that is the Patriots, you know, the one built on team first, paycheck second, you know, the one built on endless practices in the snow and rain, the one built on the gritty, hardcore discipline of Bill Belichick, isn't all peaches and cream? Apparently, there are fractures in the infrastructure in New England. According to reports, Tom Brady is now at the, quote, center of conflict with Bill Belichick. And that is spreading throughout the team. Cece, how important is it for Brady and Belichick to be on the same page for it to mean success in the New England franchise?
It's not important at all. I know people might be amazed, but it's not important at all. Tom Brady has made it clear that he's the quarterback of New England Patriots, and that's it. And Belichick is running everything else. You listen to the interviews that Brady through the years, he stays away from personnel decisions. He stays away from his friends that he's lost through the years that have been on the team. You know, he says, I'm going to miss these guys, but he never crosses over in the questioning what Bill is doing. And Bill has the ultimate authority. Tom knows in his relationship with the Kraft and their family that Bill is their guy. All right, now y'all can talk about fractions and everything. Anytime you have a Bill Belichick run organization, man, people aren't going to be happy. But that's what you are trading in for winning. This is what he does. The most difficult place to play in college football is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, with Nick Saban. Like, if you don't want the easy way, you want to learn football at this highest level, go to Tuscaloosa and play for Nick Saban. Now, if you want to learn football at this highest level in the NFL, you need to go to Foxborough and you need to enroll in Bill Belichick. And what you're going to do is you're going to set aside your own personal agenda, and you know that you're going to be taught at a level, and you know you're going to have a chance to win championships. So for me, I don't think there's some type of fraction there. I think that Bill is going to run it his way. That's the way it's going to be done. I think that Tom knows, and that's the only coach that he's dealt with. And Tom's his relationship with the Kraft family, he knows what the deal is. So I just believe this is the normal business of New England. And we just happen to be talking about it now.
When you say he knows what the deal is with the Kraft family, what do you mean?
I'm sure the Kraft and Mr. Kraft has let him know that Bill Belichick is going to be making all the football decisions. He's in control of the roster. He's in control of the food. He's in control of everything within the organization.
Well, the reason I think we're talking about this now is whatever their relationship had been, we are now in a place where Tom Brady's not there for the first day of OTAs. And I know you said yesterday maybe that's happened in the past, that when we didn't cover it 24/7 the way we do now, but it wasn't as much news. I saw Jeff Darlington report yesterday. He doesn't expect Brady to show up to much of the offseason. Now, that was couched as Brady, if you watch Tom versus Time, he talked a lot about how this offseason is going to be about his family, about how he's going to focus on that. And Bill Belichick, well, he hasn't named Tom Brady specifically. He said day before yesterday, listen, the guys aren't going to be here. I've talked to them. They have other obligations, or, you know, it's no big deal. He basically wanted to minimize it as much as possible. But what I think the Nick Saban comparison's a perfect one. But the difference, of course, is you get to graduate from Alabama. You go there to learn something and hopefully maybe become a pro, and then you go on from there. I think it's really hard to be a Patriot for more than 4 or 5 years. One of the reasons they have constant roster turnover is because that's how they do things. They're always churning the bottom of the roster. Nobody's job is ever safe. But the other reason they have constant roster turnover, I believe, is because the Patriots know that once you've been in that system, that grind for more than 4 or 5 years, it can start to wear on you. I mean, you can read the quotes from the players that left this year, the quotes from Danny Amendola, even the quotes from Nate Solder, who had been there for quite some time. He'd been their left tackle for nearly a decade, talking about just how taxing it is. We know being a pro football player is taxing for everyone, but how particularly taxing it is in New England. And then you have Tom Brady, who's been there for 18 years, who's been the center of attention there for the bulk of those 18 years. I don't blame Brady at all if this has grown tiresome for him, even if it is a relationship that has worked out brilliantly for all parties.
You'll be shocked to know this is my take. I don't want to hear football players complain because it's too hard, even though you're playing to the very end. You're playing the last game of the season. I don't want to hear you complain that it's too cold outside and we have to practice in the snow, or that you call me out in the middle of a meeting and you say my name. I feel like it's such an honor to be able to play football, and then to play at an organization where at any given year for the last 10, 15 years, you're going to be there at the end in some capacity. Mm-hmm. It just makes me feel like you've been given this unbelievable opportunity. You all go in with the same chances every year, and you guys are the ones that are left there standing. You want to complain about money, but don't complain it's too hard, or Bill Belichick is too hard on me, or I can't deal with all the pressures of being here. Because you're one of the few people that get to wear one of those rings that everyone else seems to covet in this league, that, like Chris, like you worked your whole career, you never got one of those rings. So I have a hard time processing both. Do you, as a fan, can you understand my perspective?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would love a ring. I wouldn't trade my career for being able to win a ring, but winning a ring is very, very special. That's what they do. Also, besides Nate Solder, besides the guys who had complaints about leaving New England, I want you to look back and see where they were when New England found them. Nate Solder was a high draft pick, but the rest of the players, Belichick makes these players into something. Look up Deion Lewis's resume, all right? Look up his great stats that he's had absent of New England. Every team in the NFL could have had him.
Amendola as well.
Okay. So all these guys made a constant choice to go somewhere, and the coach actually made them better, and the coach put them in a position that they wouldn't have gotten the paychecks that they got if it wasn't for Belichick. So be careful in your complaining, all right? Be careful, because it is football, and there's a certain amount of sacrifice that's everywhere. So it's not always the grass is greener. There is a different level of commitment. In New England, there's a different level of stress that goes with the job, but all 32 teams, there's a great deal of stress.
And and this won't surprise you, Jenna, I feel totally opposed to where you're at on this. I don't think football players should be considered in a different bucket than any of us in day-to-day jobs. Like, there are plenty of people that choose not to go to the most successful law firm or the most successful accounting agency or the most successful whatever, because these jobs they enjoy more, they like their bosses more, they like the environment more.
But there's more of those jobs, too, all right? There's more of those jobs going around, all right? There's less football players. It's very, very rare. And Bill Belichick will always be a destination for football players who want to get better.
All right, we got to take a break. Coming up, let's get into some basketball. Was LeBron James too passive in Game 1? Does he need to be more aggressive? His coach seems to think so. Next on First Things First. Finally, the Golden State Warriors, remember when they were bad for a month to end the regular season? It seems like ages ago, as they made quick work of the Spurs in Game 2, winning 116-101. The Warriors have now won 9 straight playoff games at home, and both Kevin Durant and Clay seem to be in top form. They both had over 30 points. Nick and the Spurs put up any resistance against Golden State?
No. I'd love to tell you yes, but the answer is no. They played as well as they could for the first half of that game. I thought the Spurs did well defensively, particularly in the first quarter. They made some shots. Patty Mills had a huge 4-point play to try to get himself going. And I'm like, man, the Spurs played great in that first quarter. They're up 6 points. Like, if you play as well as you can and you're up 6 points, you know trouble's coming. The third quarter has been the Warriors' quarter all year long. And my biggest takeaway from this game is more about the long-term projection for Golden State, because it does seem like Andre Iguodala has figured out this whole pacing thing. Because Iggy can he looked washed the beginning of last year and then was valuable in the playoffs. He had his worst shooting year ever this year. Hit 3 huge three-pointers yesterday and was active. Almost had a massive dunk, just missed off the back of the rim. If that is what Iggy is, forget even the shooting, just the athleticism, what Iggy is going to look like these playoffs moving forward, that adds an important, dangerous wrinkle to the most talented team in the NBA.
Yeah, it was nice to see that last night, but also that was just the first quarter. He does play better defense when his shots going in. First quarter, he hit 3 big shots for them. So that's something that we haven't seen. That's something that we must watch going forward. But the question there is, can he do that for 2 months? Right. And that's going to be hard to do, given the way, the lack of athleticism he's been able to show throughout the season. But if Clay is able to shoot the basketball like this, and to me, which I thought they would do, I thought they would change the offense. I thought that they would play with more pace and get Kevin Durant involved in the offense more so than they did those last 10 to 15 games of the regular season. And he's the igniter for that offense, especially with Steph not being in the lineup. So Golden State, man, they are an amazing shooting team. You start to see the way they pass the ball. You start to see, wow, why did people fall in love with the way they play basketball the last 3 years? In the last 2 games, we've seen versions of that.
I'm going to ask a ridiculous question just because I feel like I must.
I love it.
If somehow the Warriors figure out what they couldn't figure out down the stretch and start playing maybe a different kind of ball that works without Steph in the lineup, is there any chance there's a little bit of a reintroduction phase when Steph comes back in?
No, because he's been the focal. That's been their status quo for the last 3+ years. So, no, I think they can fall right back into that. The only thing that you might see when Steph comes back in is a regression defensively. They will not be as good. They will not be as long. They will not be as athletic defensively when Steph comes back. But their offense goes from a really good offense to a transcendent how do you stop it offense, so it more than makes up.
At Golden State, it becomes easier for the other 4 guys on the court when Steph steps on the court. And he is the predominant ball handler. So, man, he gets them shots. He gets them more space than they would have if he wasn't there.
And one other note as far as the other 4 guys on the court, nobody misses Steph more than Draymond. Draymond, we have learned, offensively, he's a great defensive player, an all-time defensive player. But offensively, when Steph's not out there, he is a total negative who has not, like, he's so used to playing with Steph the last few years that his offensive game has not adjusted to playing without Steph Curry. We saw that again yesterday. It didn't matter, but he wants Steph back as much as anybody.
All right, let's move on to the Cavs. They trail the Pacers in their opening round series 1-0 as they prepare for Game 2 on Wednesday night. No pressure on them, only expected to make the finals for the 4th straight season. LeBron had a triple-double in Game 1 with 24 points, but Coach Ty Lue said he needs more from his star.
He has to be aggressive, set the tone early. You know, we talked about that today also, just being aggressive early, setting the tone, especially for these new guys, you know, bringing these guys along. So he understood that. But once again, he's always a guy trying to get his teammates off early, get them guys going, and then try to fill the game out. But be ready to set the tone game, too.
Nick, would you say that was LeBron James' biggest problem in Game 1, that he wasn't aggressive enough?
Early. I think the key word that he was using there is early, and I think it was the first quarter, and that's where they lost that basketball game. Because you look at the overall totality of the game, you would say, I mean, he was driving to the basket repeatedly. He had 14 drives to the basket. That's 2 more than his season average. He was getting to the free throw line a lot. He couldn't hit a jump shot to save his life. Didn't hit a single shot outside of the restricted area. But it was early. They lost the game by being down 33-14 in the first quarter.
He didn't take a shot in the first quarter.
Well, he didn't take a shot till they were down double digits. He didn't make a shot in the first quarter. He was 0 for 3 from the field in the first quarter. So I agree with Ty Lue there, like setting the tone early. I understand LeBron's strategy. I think it was, we got a lot of new guys. We got a lot of guys without playoff experience. And for us to do the standard that Chris has been holding him to, because he says it's the standard LeBron holds himself to. Can we win a title? He knows the only shot they have, however small it is if his teammates are flowing by the time they get to the NBA Finals. So tried to get that going early, but it was the wrong strategy for Game 1. Like, they needed him to assert himself in Game 1 from the first 5 minutes of the game. He didn't, and the game got away from them. So what Ty Lue was saying there, I totally echo as far as early. I don't mind late in games, him trying to find open three-point shooters, particularly in a comeback. It's why they needed such a drastic comeback.
I don't mind LeBron starting that way because they've done it and been so successful, so I'm not going to question that. That's easy to do. Look at the game and be like, oh, LeBron should start more aggressive. Well, Kevin Love, Rodney Hood, whoever else on the court, like, they have to have the same mentality. Now, LeBron, this will be a totally different first quarter. But if he's not able to hit his jump shot, Jenna, it's going to be a long night for the Cavs. So I disagree with Nick that they lost the game in the first quarter. They didn't lose the game. LeBron's inability to hit a jump shot, that's why they couldn't come back, because the only thing he could get was going to the hole. And if he had been able to hit a jump shot, it would have opened up the court, and it might have given the other guys some confidence to get their shot to go in. So, yes, it's easy to look at the first quarter and be like, they were awful in the first quarter, but they got to be better defensively.
Right.
In the first quarter, they got to be more aggressive on the defensive end. But if the other guys don't make shots, if Hood doesn't show up, like if George Hill, what are we going to get from him from a point guard standpoint? If Kevin Love doesn't score in double figures, who are the Cavs going to beat?
Well, and listen, we talk about LeBron having a subpar game. He had 24 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists. The reason I bring up the 24 points is this. The other starters combined had 25 points. That's the fewest of any LeBron James fellow starters in a home playoff game ever. So they weren't going, I mean, nobody could hit a shot. All year long, the reason the Cavs had lost games they shouldn't have was their defense. Wasn't the reason they lost this game. It was the reason they were down huge in the first quarter. But if you would have said, hey, Pacers are going to score 98 going into the game, Cleveland would have said, okay, we'll take our chances with that. I'm not worried that LeBron's going to be, you can't hit a jump shot in this series. I will say this. If there is one silver lining for Cleveland, I think the silver lining is potentially, assuming this thing doesn't go 6-7 games, I don't think it will. I think had they come back from that deficit, it would have further set a precedent for the team that's a dangerous one, which is don't worry about it. We got this. And once you get to the next round, what they did against Toronto a month ago was special, coming back from that major halftime deficit. Once you get to the upper echelon of teams in the postseason, Toronto, Philly, whomever they face in the finals, you can lose a game in the first quarter. You can be down 15. If you're down 15 points to Houston, the game's over. I know they were down 30 to Philly and almost came back. That was an outlier, and Joel Embiid wasn't out there.
The other thing, it doesn't make sense for LeBron to play the first 12 minutes. All right, now you talk about they lost the game. LeBron was exhausted after the first quarter. All right? Yeah. It did not make any sense for him to play the first 12 minutes. So in the playoffs, the reason why you don't see great comebacks and everything is because it takes too much energy. It takes too much energy on the defensive end also to try to mount those comebacks. And that's why Cleveland came up short twice in trying to mount comebacks.
The other thing Ty Lue talked about were lineup changes, and he's going to make another lineup change at some point. Hasn't said what it is yet. Do you think they need to? What went wrong with the first lineup change? And like I said, maybe they're better off without actually having
a lineup,
a starting five.
I never liked the idea of Jeff Green as in the starting lineup when you're already also starting Kevin Love. To me, you can't, if you're going to go small in the front line, if you're going to go without a true center, it has to be because you are going all offense. And Jeff Green's not a good enough shooter for me to have a LeBron, Love, Jeff Green starting front court. So I would imagine it's going to be Larry Nance for Jeff Green. The other one that I think is possible is JR for Rodney Hood.
Yeah, that's the one I would go with. I would stay with Jeff Green because I don't think your bench is going to be hurt. I think Jeff Green is a better starter than Larry Nance Jr. Larry Nance Jr. has never been a starter. Him and Clarkson coming off the bench playing together, that tandem coming from Los Angeles, I believe, is a better combination. And Rodney Hood, what is he going to be in the playoffs? Like, we don't know. JR, he's proven.
Right.
LeBron has confidence in him. Kevin Love has confidence in him. So I see them starting, especially if George Hill is still Nick. I see them starting JR at the 2 tonight compared to
tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow night.
But those are it's going to be one of those two or maybe both of those changes. I don't think it's going to be like Calderon in for George Hill unless it's an injury thing. Or it would either be JR for Hood, Nance for Green, or both of them.
Or Calderon for LeBron. Also,
that one I say is unlikely.
Okay. Coming up, where will Des Bryant play next season?
He's got opinions on that.
Who does? Hey, welcome back to First Things First. Chris Canny is with us. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning,
you,
Jenna, Nick,
Absolutely.
CC. How's everybody?
We are good. We are still talking about Des Bryant. You would think that we would have had the story moved on, but yet now
Well, there was major news that moved the story forward on Friday.
Des now has an idea of where he wants to play, and you might have a stake in this game. Let's go over Des Bryant's career year by year real quick. So good, great, good. Thursday, he thought the Cowboys would ask him to take a pay cut. Friday, Cowboys just cut him. Saturday, onward and upward. The 8-year veteran now looking for a new team. Apparently, the Packers, Saints, Bills, and Ravens are all showing interest, and it looks like Des Bryant says the Giants are his #1 choice. Not sure how the Giants feel about that. Chris, which team do you think is the best fit for Des Bryant?
Well, I think that's Des and a little bit of emotion talking because he wants the opportunity to get back at the Cowboys and play them twice a year. But I don't think that's going to happen realistically when you look at those NFC East teams. I don't think there's any room on their rosters for Des Bryant in terms of what he brings to the table. And also, you got to consider the culture when you try to absorb what comes along with Des Bryant. Not saying that he's a problem child, but you do realize that he's a high-strung player. He plays with a lot of emotion. So that's something that you have to plan for and you have to have an answer to. And so most locker rooms can't handle a guy like that. But some of the teams...
Two guys.
Most locker rooms can't handle a guy like that. You're saying with Odell there in New York.
Two guys, yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Two guys. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
Rams or anything.
Yeah, you know, exactly.
Right?
But listen, he's not going to end up with the NFC East team. But of the teams that are interested, I think the Baltimore Ravens make a lot of sense. If you look at Joe Flacco the last couple of years, he hasn't been very good. Last year, the Ravens were toward the bottom of the league in touchdown receptions. They had 20 last year. That was 23rd. So Des Bryant, adding him alongside with Michael Crabtree, I think that would be an improvement in terms of the talent on that roster at that position. Also, some places, San Francisco would make a lot of sense when you start talking about a big body wide receiver playing alongside Marquise Goodwin and Pierre Garçon. That would make sense a little bit as well. The Seattle Seahawks, they lost one of their big targets in Paul Richardson in free agency to the Washington Redskins, so it would make sense. And, of course, there's a little bit of similarities in the offense that they run in Dallas under Scott Linehan and what they would be running in Seattle with Brian Schottenheimer, that Air Coryell offense. So I'm starting to look at opportunities, fit, and then, of course, teams that have cap space that are going to be able to pay debt.
Seattle also lost Jimmy Graham, which is a noteworthy. There's going to be some balls to catch. It's fun. I'm not disagreeing with you for the sake of disagreeing with you. I have written down on my notes right here, Ravens are, then in all caps, awful fit. And so here's why I don't like the Ravens. I think Joe Flacco is done as even an above-average NFL quarterback. I just think that there's no – I think there's been no – what are you laughing about, Cece?
Joe Flacco is definitely not done. Like, as a quarterback?
I didn't say as a quarterback. I said
listen, the contract say he ain't done. They can't get rid of him right now.
Right. And so, but as an above-average NFL quarterback, I don't think Joe Flacco will have another year where we look at him and say he was one of the 15 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't, and where if he does have that year, it's going to be based on the strength of his long ball, the Mike Wallace pass, the pass interference pass, and I don't know that that is a great, perfect fit for Dez. One of the teams that was listed that is interested, though, is the team that I said Monday morning would be the team that I think would be the best case scenario for the player, and that's Green Bay. Not just because they have the best quarterback in the world, not just because they got $14 million in cap space, but also because we've talked a lot about how when you're building out your wide receiving core, Cece, you mentioned you want to be like a basketball team. You want a point guard, a shooting guard, a power forward. They don't have the power forward. They got 5'10" Randall Cobb. They got 6'1" Devontae Adams. They don't have a big guy and a big super athletic guy. And when we've talked about where Dez was at his best, when CC said yesterday, Tony Romo made Dez Bryant to a degree. It was, he's not open, but I'm going to throw him open. I am going to, even though he didn't get great separation, I'm going to trust my ability to make this play and the improvisation, running around and him breaking loose downfield. Nobody in the world is better at that than Aaron Rodgers. And they obviously lost Jordy Nelson. So for all those reasons, I think Green Bay would be the ideal fit for the player and for the team.
What factors into the fit for Dez Bryant? What do you think needs to is it the quarterback? Is it the offensive system? What do you think is the best thing that he needs to factor
That's
in?
a great question, Jenna, because as a wide receiver, more so than any other position, that we're system players. And not only do we need a play caller, not only do we need other assets, being a tight end, other receivers. If I'm a possession receiver, I need someone with speed. I also need a slot receiver. And the quarterback's ability, how much of the offense are they going to allow the quarterback to do to operate? So, Jenna, that's the heart of the matter. People are talking about cap space. People are talking about fit. To me, I must analyze who Dez Bryant is, all right? Dez Bryant is not a fast receiver. So some of the places that I would debunk him going to would be, I don't see him going to Baltimore. And the reason why is because Michael Crabtree is not a speed receiver. Joe Flacco is a deep ball thrower. That's where he has his most success. So if Crabtree and Dez Bryant were on the same team, they would have the slowest starting two wide receivers in the NFL. Now, there's some other things I disagree with. New York Giants, Brandon Marshall, good friend of mine. I believe Dez Bryant is a better football player than him right now. So if they were looking to get a big body to go opposite of Odell, forget the personalities. Dez Bryant would be a person that I would talk to. Now, would I be able to afford him? Do I want to bring his attitude into the locker room with Odell Beckham? And it might be good for 14 games, but it wouldn't be good those 2 Dallas games. Because in those Dallas games, he would want the ball every time. So I believe it's something you should look at, but I don't believe it's something that is a great fit. The best fit for him, to me, is where no one is mentioned but you, is San Francisco. They have the speed receiver. They also have the cap space. They also have a up-and-coming bright quarterback. But more importantly, they have the offensive mind in Kyle Shanahan that can call plays to be able to dictate what he wanted Dez to do. Now, that is a wide receiver-friendly offense. I believe Dez is a better receiver than Pierre Garçon at this point in his career. So, for me, the things that I look at, Seattle, no. San Francisco, I believe, is the best fit for Dez. Now, he also, money-wise, how much money does Dez want? Because I believe that will have something to do with where he ends up.
Yeah, you're talking about you got to have the money to pay Dez Bryant. It comes down to teams with cap space, and the teams that we mentioned, even though we might not necessarily agree on fit,
right,
are all teams that have cap space. So it's going to have to be a situation where the dollars and cents make sense to Dez Bryant's camp.
What type of contract do you? I think he's going to sign a one-year deal. I don't know. What do you? I would imagine 1 year, $9 million is about where it's going to fall.
Well, if Michael Crabtree is making $7 million a year, you would think that Dez Bryant would make slightly more than that. So maybe it's a $9, $10 million deal, somewhere in that range over a couple of seasons, 2 to 3 years.
All right, Chris, stick around. Coming up, how big of a deal is the reported rift between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady? Next on First Things First.
This is Nick Wright, and I wanted to tell you that this episode of the First Things First podcast is brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings. There's a new boss in town at Buffalo Wild Wings, and he deals in bacon. It's the Bacon Boss Burger, featuring bacon 3 different ways and a blanket. I said a blanket of white cheese sauce. And he's joined by other new favorites like the smothered cheesesteak quesadilla, sweet chili shrimp, and Alaskan cod classic. All pair perfectly with a Sam 76, a fruity ale with the crisp finish of a lager. Hurry in today Try them all before they're gone at Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports, available for only a limited time while supplies last. And please, of course, drink responsibly. Now, back to the show.
Back here, First Things First with Chris Canty. Is there a price to pay for winning? Some of the New England Patriots think so. We've all heard the stories of the tight ship Bill Belichick runs over there, the crazy practices, the calling out of the players, the high expectations, the low paychecks. But they win, and everyone's happy. Or are they? According to reports, Tom Brady is now at the, quote, center of conflict with Bill Belichick. And that has players jumping ship and others like Rob Gronkowski contemplating retirement. Also Gronkowski. Chris, how important is it for Brady and Belichick to be on the same page?
Well, here's the thing. Let's start with this. Most head coaches that are highly successful in the NFL, they're at sometimes can be a jerk. That's just what it is. Out of the 4 head coaches that I've played for, 3 of them fit that bill. The 3 coaches that I had that were like that won Super Bowls.
I'm trying
the other guy that we had that was a head coach, he didn't turn out so well as a head coach. So ultimately what happens is you have to have a head coach in place that makes guys have that sense of urgency in the building to take advantage of every single opportunity to get better, because that's the culture that breeds success in our league. You don't want complacency to set in. And that's what Belichick has been great at being able to do. And for the most part of his tenure as the head coach, he's had Tom Brady as an ally in making that happen. But now it's gotten to the point where Tom Brady and the rest of those guys on that Patriots team want Bill Belichick to trust them. And at some point, the head coach has to empower his players and allow them to take ownership of the team. It just doesn't feel like Bill Belichick has done a good job of towing that line, and now he's got a situation where the players seem like they're revolting against him.
Well, and I hate to keep bringing up the same instance, but I do think a lot of this has stemmed from the Malcolm Butler situation. And I say that because, not because the players adored Malcolm Butler so much, even though he does seem like he was a very well-liked teammate, but because they ask you to make so many sacrifices. Less money, practice in the rain, practice in the snow, as some of the players we've left said was a pain. The constant browbeating, all of that, right? And guess what, though? We will always put you in position to win. We will always do what is best for the team. We are asking you to sacrifice your personal stats, your personal ego, in lieu of what is best for the team. And if there is the belief, as we've heard from some of the quotes from the players that have left, that, well, all of a sudden the guy making us do that didn't do it himself, all of a sudden that guy put, whether it was a personal conflict, trying to prove a point, a contract battle, whatever it was, in higher priority than doing what was best for the team in the bleeping Super Bowl, well, now all of a sudden that message doesn't resonate quite as well. Now all of a sudden that's tougher to swallow. And so I think Bill Belichick for a long time has operated, I mean, you can look at down to the way he dresses. I can be
He's a phenomenal dresser,
okay,
by the way. I love that cutout.
I can be this way because I'm better than everybody and because I know better than everybody. The moment there's all of a sudden a slight crack in that armor, I think you start seeing what you said, not quite a mutiny, but you start seeing more of these types of reports this offseason than I would say in the last 4 or 5 off seasons combined.
But Cece argues that it's, well, that it's not a crack in the armor, that it was intentional, that this was the decision that he decided to make for whatever reason, and that's the way he runs the organization.
Yeah, and it's not going to change this offseason. They are not going to have some type of democratic society, like they're going to put together a team council. Like, nothing's going to change. Like, this is not no new news. Like, every good coach I ever had in football, now you can talk about baseball, volleyball, some other stuff. You might have liked them. All my good coaches, I did not like them. My high school coach, I hated him. And on my Hall of Fame speech, he was the most influential coach I've ever had in my life. You know the reason why? Because he told me the things that no one else would tell me. He made me go places that I would never go, psychologically, physically. He made me do things that I didn't think I was capable of doing. And that's what you want from a football coach. When you coach in tennis, golf, badminton, you can have some other type of coach. It can be warm and fuzzy. But Bill Belichick, if I go back and play football, that dude right there, he can coach me. You know the reason why? Because he's going to teach me the game. He's going to give me an advantage when I go onto the field. And also, he's going to police the rest of the team. All I got to do is do my job, show up to work and do my job, and I'm going to get a chance to win me a championship. And for me, That's very important. I can't question how important it is for you, how important it is for you, Nick, but it's important for me, for a guy who spent his life playing pro football, that I would have a chance to win. And Bill Belichick would give me that chance. Would I like everything he did? No, but it would give me the chance to win. And I know it would maximize my talent. It would get the best out of me. And at the end of the day, that's really important to me.
Absolutely, CC, and you said it right there. Coaching, and Tom Coughlin always used to address the team this way. And before he gave us a criticism, he would say coaching is making men do what they don't want to do so they can become what they want to become. And it takes a little bit of a fire breather to be able to get that message across and set the agenda for the team. But there also comes a point where that head coach then has to empower the leaders on that team, and they have to take ownership of it. And I guess that's a fine line, and you're seeing right now where Bill Belichick and Tom Brady aren't necessarily on the same page in terms of Bill Belichick trusting Tom and the rest of the leaders on that team.
Well, that's something, because this is the first time we're talking about him not trusting Bill Belichick or not Tom Brady or not wanting to empower the leaders on his team, because that's never something we've really discussed in the past couple
Well, it's been there. Okay?
Maybe it has.
When Randy Moss left New England, Tom Brady was not happy. Did he go on to have success afterwards? Absolutely. There have been other moves that the players were not happy about. Lawyer Malloy, when they cut him. Richard Seymour, when they traded him. Last year, Chandler Jones gave up on him, sent him off to Arizona. This is not new. This is the first time we're talking about it.
But what about the friction between Brady and Belichick? Do you think that's new?
No, here's the thing. I think it's becoming a thing because it's been so long with those two at the helm. It's 18 years. Right. And so at some point, you have to trust me that I know exactly what you want, and I'm going to do everything that it takes to put our team in the best position to be successful. And I think that's where the rift comes into play, not to mention everything that happened with the Jimmy Garoppolo saga and him forcing that trade by making Bill Belichick go to Robert Kraft and say, okay, we got to deal this guy.
Well, and I've heard you talk about, Chris, that there became a point in your career where the coaches couldn't really teach you that much anymore.
No.
Right? I'm correct in saying
yes, absolutely.
Right? There was a point in your career where it was more of a collaborative effort. And I know how highly you regard and how highly you speak of the late Denny Green, because he seemed to embrace that collaborative effort.
Yes.
And that's where I think some of the Brady-Belichick conflict is I don't think Belichick's down for that. Like, I don't know how much more Tom Brady has to learn from Bill Belichick. Like, he is as smart of a football player, as accomplished a football player as we've ever seen. Go ahead.
Every great leader, you're going to have friction with the person who is the general. It is never going to always be nice. Denny Green, had great things to say. Yeah, but there's a lot of things, too, I don't tell you. No reason why? Because they're not good for you to know. All right? There will always be friction. At the top of that, Bill Walsh and Joe Montana. Let's not forget where Joe ended his career. Not only did Joe end his career somewhere else, Jerry Rice. So the greatest that have ever played this game, they have had friction with someone like Belichick, who was over their career. And yes, they had Super Bowl wins together, had done tremendous things together. But yes, when you're to that point, you're going to have some friction at the top. And this is not unusual for me to see what Belichick and what Brady potentially are going through. I don't make it out to be as big as you guys make it out to be. It's the price of doing business with a Belichick, with a Saban, with a Bill Parcells. That's what you're going to get.
The only reason I think that it's becoming a bigger deal, CC, and where I might disagree with you, is because the fact that Josh McDaniels didn't take that Indianapolis coach job makes me feel like at some point Bill Belichick's tenure as head coach of the Patriots is coming, and I think it's sooner rather than later. But the fact that Jimmy G is not in line to be the successor to Tom Brady makes it feel like ownership has sided with the quarterback in saying that they're going to be transitioning from Bill Belichick, but Tom Brady might be around a couple of seasons longer.
This is what Robert Kraft said. He said, we expect Tom Brady to be our quarterback the next couple of years. But he also said on the record that people don't seem to pick up that Bill Belichick can coach here as long as he wants to. Now, to me, that seems like to extend beyond when Brady is going to retire.
All right, Chris, thanks
Great
so
job,
much.
man. By the way,
stuff
congrats
today.
to Chris Canty's radio station. Very monumentous. They beat the opposing station in New York City for the first time ever. It's a huge deal. I'm a radio nerd.
Yeah, that's the first time someone congratulated his replacement.
Wow. Talk to basketball on the other side. First things first.
Hey, man.
Oh, hey, everyone. Welcome to First Things First. Didn't even see you there. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright. It is hump day. We are in it. We are ready to go.
The camera surprised you.
Yeah, I had no idea. I was just hanging out here all morning, and then I looked up, and there you were. So, how you doing?
That's a great-looking suit, Chris
Great
Carter.
suit, Chris Carter.
I think you look lovely, Jenna Wolf.
Love your tie,
People
Nick. We're just going to start with
I'm being honest. People can't see the shoes Jenna wears on camera, but they're lovely as well.
Yeah, I think that
What is happening?
people on Twitter, what they should do is you should cast a vote for the people you think are the best dressed in morning television. And I just think it will be way, way up there.
Okay, I'll do a poll. I'll start a Twitter poll. Who are the other? We'll discuss off the air who
just
the candidates are.
morning TV.
Morning
anything.
TV. All right,
News,
got it.
Sports or anything. Morning TV.
All right,
coming
for your head, Morning Joe.
I know, Joe. It's okay, Joe.
Yeah,
not coming
coming for your head.
Or you
Back
make up.
Scarborough.
Walk that back just a little bit. Why don't we talk about some sports? Because that seems more comfortable. Welcome to the NFL offseason of reportedly disgruntled superstars. You have your Odell, you have your Dez, maybe Tom Brady. Now, is it Aaron Rodgers? In a report by Yahoo Sports, Rodgers is supposedly frustrated with the organization after not being consulted on personnel decisions. Just this offseason, the Packers fired his quarterback coach in Alex Van Pelt and released his favorite target in Jordy Nelson. After this report, Rodgers tweeted out #Fake News Tuesday, so we know how he feels. He met the media yesterday discussing the offseason.
That's the toughest part about the whole thing, is losing guys over the years, the Jordys, the James Jones, the A.J. Hawks, the John Coons, the Julius Peppers, guys you get close to. And again, those are team decisions. I know my role, and that's to play quarterback the best that I can, and the team is going to try and put the right guys in place, the right coaches in place, the right players in place. You just have to trust the process.
We haven't heard that before. A lot of this has to come down to, Cece, whether players should have the right to be able to either be consulted on or meddle with or have some say in personnel decisions. What was your reaction to the Yahoo Sports report about Aaron Rodgers?
It's what I've believed. I didn't believe that Aaron Rodgers wanted some type of input, but as a veteran player, there's a lot of things that once you start to understand the game and once you've had success at the NFL game, there's other things that you have to have motivate you and other connective things that help you play better or other things that draw your interest outside of football. Now, when you get into an NFL locker room and then you go home, there's not a lot of people that you're going to meet and encounter that have a life or understand like what you're going through. So a lot of that camaraderie and a lot of the things that you really rely on is the locker room providing you with peers, not a bunch of young guys, because once you get beyond that, the things that you want to spend your time at, the things that you might want to conversate about, you might not be able to do that with a great percentage of the locker room. So when you lose a Julius Pepper, when you lose some of these other things, as a veteran player, it hurts you because it takes away some of your enjoyment and the people who you can talk to and who you can trust. As Aaron Rodgers gone throughout his career, let's look at how he started his career. With Brett Favre not necessarily taking him under his wing to teach him about pro football. So he had to learn a lot on his own. He had to develop a lot of relationships on his own. And when you start getting rid of those players and you see these players go other places and continue to play, like a Julius Peppers, and have some type of success, it eats away at you because you like the locker room, but you like some older guys who are mature, guys who you've had battles with, you've had success stories with, so it affects the players. But to me, that doesn't give you the intel or the knowledge that you should be involved in the personnel. He doesn't know personnel better than the front office knows personnel. And if he did get involved in personnel, how much money do you pay him? The guys who are friends with Aaron, do you pay them more because Aaron Rodgers, he's the best quarterback in the league? And as a player, you get too emotional. So, no, I don't think any player, I don't care from Tom Brady to Aaron Rodgers to any, I don't believe they know the personnel as well as the front office or are equipped to do that type of job.
You understand why the personnel decisions made around the Green Bay Packers would land differently with Aaron Rodgers than the personnel decisions made with the New England Patriots have landed with Tom Brady. Because the Patriots have had year after year, high-level, unprecedented success. Rodgers probably feels, man, we made a Super Bowl almost a decade ago, haven't been back since. I've been playing at this super high level, so the way we've been doing business maybe isn't the smartest way to do business. But I don't think, of all those guys you mentioned, CeCe, Jordy, Julius, that he mentioned, Kuhn, I think this is about the move they made. I think the impetus of this is about a non-player move. Alex Van Pelt. That was the first name we heard. That was the one name. His quarterback's coach. Thank you, Jenna. That he went on the record, and Aaron's very cautious with what he says in interviews. He has admitted he records on his own line every interview he does, so he can't be misquoted. And if he is misquoted, he has proof he was misquoted. So he's very judicious with what he says in these interviews. And he went out of his way to say the Alex Van Pelt thing surprised me, confused me a little bit. And I think that Aaron maybe even agrees with CeCe that players shouldn't have a ton of say in how this is done. And there's 32 teams in the league. I don't know of a team in the NFL that they are heavily consulting players saying, what should we do with this personnel move? But I wouldn't blame Aaron Rodgers if he thought, the one place I should have some say in is who the flipping quarterback's coach is. I'm the only quarterback on this team that matters. You guys can say we put all this time into Brett Hundley and Joe Callahan and then instantly move on from them the year after. Like, the quarterback's coach works with me, and to move on from him without asking me if I want you to move on from him, if they had asked him, what do you think he was going to say? I think he would. My guess is he would say no, but I think he would feel, even if they just tell him ahead of time, we're moving on from him. Even if they just give you the heads up. Like, that's the part.
Okay, if they give you the heads up, then they start a precedent. Now, other things that I'm starting to do or thinking about doing, do I have to run them past Aaron too?
I think it's...
Let me tell you what's more important. It's more important that Mike McCarthy, that's what he's done. He's coached quarterbacks his career. He's called plays his whole career. And if Mike McCarthy can't work with Alex, I don't care what Aaron thinks. Because the head coach is spending more time. And the head coach is the offensive mind. And the head coach is the one who wants to get rid of him. So it's not as if the wide receiver coach didn't like the quarterback coach. They didn't get along. It was the head coach, obviously. And he spends more time with them. I think that time that the head coach and the offensive staff spends with that quarterback coach, they know him better than Aaron Rodgers does.
I think that very well may be true, which is why Aaron Rodgers, you can argue, shouldn't have veto power over this decision. But I do think when he's the best player, I believe, arguably in the history of your franchise, one of the greatest franchises in pro sports, a simple heads up would have gone a long way. And when you say it sets a precedent, like, I don't think it's a bad precedent to set as far as in this very specific instance. If they're going to change the time of the quarterback meetings, right, I would think now that's different than we're making some major adjustment we're running past.
Right, and then we're also making a huge assumption that Alex, the quarterback coach, that he was good. Like, we're making a huge assumption that, hey, because Aaron Rodgers is good, maybe his quarterback coach is good. But what I'm going to trust is what I know about the NFL and Mike McCarthy. And I trust Mike McCarthy in coaching quarterback and calling offensive plays more than I do any other information that's come out of Green Bay.
Well, does it factor in at all that they're going to start to work with him now on this new contract coming up, and obviously money is going to be a big issue, and they want to be in each of their good graces? I know that he doesn't know much about personnel, and he doesn't know much about the salary cap, but he knows Jordy Nelson. He knows who he likes to throw the ball to. He knows who he's been successful with. Maybe he doesn't have veto power, but maybe just so that you have this, like, olive branch of, hey, we're going to start to sit down soon and start negotiating this. We want this to be okay with all parties involved. Yeah. Isn't that, can you extend that?
I wouldn't do it because one day they're going to come knocking on his door. All right? One day they're going to get rid of Aaron Rodgers, too. That's the inevitability of being a pro player. That's one of the things that we all have in common. One day they're going to take that jersey off your back, and you got to go. You got to go somewhere else to be if you want to work. And that's going to happen to Aaron too, as good as he is. So then what do they do then? Do they give him some type of warning? Hey, Aaron, over the next couple of years, we're thinking about phasing you out. Like, well, how should they handle that point?
But I don't think you have to worry about that point right now. I just think that hurt feelings and the idea of disrespect, no matter what you do for a living, are a real thing. And I think that if they had to do it all over again, would they have given him a heads up on Alex Van Pelt? Would they have tried to set aside precedent to a degree to make, because maybe they didn't realize he was going to react with the way he did. And Cece, I agree. I don't know how good Alex Van Pelt is.
Thank you.
Which is why, I'm not making the argument they made a mistake in getting rid of Alex Van Pelt. The argument I'm making is I think they made potentially a mistake in not factoring in how
NFL
Aaron
front
Rodgers
offices are making a mistake if they start going to players, asking them what they think about who should be here and who shouldn't be here.
Regardless of the player.
NFL front offices are also making a mistake if they start asking the players who should be coaching the players.
Cece, let me just ask you real quick. Do you draw no distinction between asking somebody their permission to a degree giving someone a heads up?
I could care less what they think.
But what about, but what about giving them a heads up? Aaron, this
I don't need to
decision
give them
has
a heads up.
Okay. Well,
I don't need to give them a warning.
Even if it's the Tom Brady's and the Aaron Rodgers.
What's the downside to it is my question.
What's the upside?
The upside is your best player's not upset.
Yeah, he's going to be upset anyway.
You don't think
what you do is open yourself up for other things that he thinks he should be involved in, and he shouldn't. People in the front office, they run the front office. You're on the field, play down there. That's what we're paying you for. All right? The personnel, someone else has handled that. That's someone else's role in this organization.
We're going to have a former Packer on the show, Greg Jennings, and we'll discuss with him as well coming up. But on the other side, how have the Pelicans been able to pull off 2 road wins as underdogs? That's next on First Things First. Pelicans and Blazers in the brow finishing the alley-oop while falling down.
They gotta stop. Listen, man. You gotta stop throwing these high degree of difficulty alley-oops to my man Anthony Davis. How many times have we shown him butt first?
Yeah.
Anthony Davis catch an alley-oop and end up falling because he had to spin to go get it. I mean, it's a hell of a play by him, but come on,
This is one of many spectacular plays the Pelicans had in last night's game.
Yes. All right, same game. Playoff Rondo is our favorite Rondo. Sick pass to Drew Holiday.
Man, put a little English on it.
We miss Rondo. Like, we thought his basketball career was over with.
This Rondo.
Now Rondo, oh, my goodness. And it was helped by the injury of Boogie Cousins, because now Alvin Gentry, the coach, has the ball in Rondo's hands so much more than when they had the Twin Towers.
Absolutely. He's been awesome in these playoffs, just like he was in last year's playoffs, those first couple games before he hurt his elbow.
All right, more now on the Pelicans and the Trailblazers. Pelicans the underdogs in this one, so the fact that they stole a road win in Game 1 was pretty big. Until last night when they stole a road win in Game 2, even bigger. Kleptos. New Orleans beat Portland again, 112-102. Drew Holiday leading the way with 33 points. Your brow, Anthony Davis with 22 points, 13 boards. Chris, how do you think the Pelicans are able to go up and be up 2-0 against this Trailblazers team?
Well, to go on the road and get up 2-0 in the series against a hot team like Portland, and we know what they can do offensively, there's a lot of things you could talk about. Of course, a lot of conversation will start with the brow, but the reason why is their defense. I mean, they have the answer for Portland, their offensive sets. They were able to negate the type of shots they were getting. Portland typically gets a lot of clean looks at the three-point line. The Damian Lillard, C.J. McCollum combination is being flat out played by playoff Rondo and Drew.
True. And coming in, we all thought that the Blazers' backcourt was going to be the backcourt to beat. No one anticipated it was going to be the other way around.
Right, and then the thing also that's nice about the playoffs, you really start seeing some stories that you're not necessarily following. The Drew Holiday. Since Boogie Cousins was injured, Drew Holiday is their next scoring option. Is probably their best one-on-one defensive player. So you start seeing some of these things, and man, how did they finish the season like that? You're able to see those stories. Rondo playing at a level that we saw last year in the playoffs, the first couple games before he got hurt. But their backcourt being able to slow down and negate the backcourt of Portland, their overall defense, being able to hold them to 100 points, under 100 points in the first game, you're going to win a lot of road games in the playoffs. So Alvin Gentry, you have to give him a lot of credit. When Boogie Cousins got hurt, a lot of people said their season was over with, but not only to get into the playoffs, say we're not satisfied, and to be up 2-0 on the number 3 seed in the Western Conference, tremendous amount of accolades and hand clap that we have to give to Alvin Gentry and that staff for going to Portland and taking it 2-0.
Well, and I mean, to win the first 2 on the road, just a little context here. That's only happened 25 times in NBA history. The team that did that, if you take the first 2 from the home team, They're 21-4. So the Pelicans are now historically heavy favorites in this series. The last 10 times that's happened, those teams are 9-1. The one loss in there was actually Rondo's team last year, and most people don't think they would have lost that had he stayed healthy against the Celtics. The 8-1, Bulls versus the Celtics. But what we have happening here is a remarkable turnabout because the better backcourt has been the Pelicans. No one could have seen that coming. How did the Blazers get the 3 seed in the West? Because of their backcourt. Damian Lillard, maybe first-team All-NBA Damian Lillard, and a fringe All-Star candidate, C.J. McCollum. Well, now we're 2 games in. Damian Lillard has been the 5th best guy in the series. That can't happen. Anthony Davis has been Anthony Davis, and Drew Holiday has been spectacular on both ends. But to Cece's point on Alvin Gentry, this I think will surprise people. The Pelicans finished this year first in the NBA in pace, the fastest team in the league. But you got to keep in mind, they were nowhere near first in pace the first 40 games of the year when Boogie Cousins was out there. So what you always say we won't talk about coaches. What Gentry did to midseason, say we're going to change the way we play. We don't have the same personnel we did. Now we're going to go run. And to be able to adjust on the fly, they have since March 1st not only a top 5 offense, but a top 5 defense in the league. That's since March 1st. We're almost at the end of April. Like, this Pelicans team has maybe been better than we thought it could be, because you look at the roster and you're like, well, they only have 4 above-average NBA guys. But those 4 guys are all playing excellent basketball. The backcourt, Anthony Davis and Nikola Mirotic.
How does Portland get back into this? You look at Damian Lillard last night, 17 points on 18 shots. How much do they need him to step up?
Man, Damian Lillard, if you're getting outscored by Drew Holiday by 10 points in the head-to-head, but it's not only because the points per game, Rondo and Drew Holiday, they're averaging about 37, 38 points. Same as Portland, but
McCollum and Lillard.
but the efficiency of it. McCollum shooting 41%. Damian Lillard shooting 30, a little above 30-something%. So they got to get better shot selection, and they can't shoot that poorly in Portland, Bill, to come out of this hole that they're in. So a lot of it is shooting the ball, the type of shots that they're getting. Most of their shots are contested compared to they're typically very good off the pick and roll, and they get some wide open looks during the game that they're not getting.
Listen, it's a great point. McCollum and Lillard are averaging the exact same number of points as Holiday and Rondo. Both 38 points per game cumulatively. But McCollum and Lillard are doing it on 36% shooting, and Rondo and Holiday are doing it on 50% shooting. So if not only does Portland not have the advantage in the backcourt, and by the way, that disregards defense. Like, keep in mind, obviously, Drew Holiday is giving you a better edge defensively than Damian Lillard is, and then C.J. McCollum is. They are a negative defensively. Holiday is one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, and Rondo can be at times a careless defender, but he can be a good defender. And then we're not even talking about Anthony Davis. If you were to tell me last week the Pelicans are going to be up 2-0, how did it happen? I would have said, well, in game 1, the Brown must have gone like 45, 20, and 5. And in game 2, he must have gone like 40, 15, and 10. Anthony Davis has been good, but not much better than his season averages. He's averaging about what his regular season points per game are, a little higher on rebounding. It's because of the backcourt.
Yeah, but he did set the tone in game number 1.
Yes.
And that's the most important. When you go out 1-0, it was because of the superstar. Also, you got to give the superstar credit. Because of his overall versatility, is he the best big man in basketball? Yes, but he's the only big man, too, that could go from a post-up offense to now a transition offense and not miss a beat.
All right, so the Pelicans take a 2-0 series lead over the Trailblazers. Cavs getting ready for their second game. Coming up, what do they have to do to even things up?
You could be looking at that face, and that won't be happy. Oh, he won't be worried. Oh, he won't be.
Back after this. Finally, speaking of Danny Ainge, we weren't. The Celtics rolled to a 120-106 win over the Bucks to take a 2-0 series lead. Jaylen Brown became the youngest Celtic ever to score 30 in a playoff game. Nick, can the Bucks rally back against this young Boston team?
I think they can, but they are going to have to make some significant adjustments. And usually when we talk about adjustments, we're talking about coaching, talking about change or rotation. That's not the type of adjustment I mean. The type of adjustment I mean is get anything whatsoever out of their backcourt. If you'd have told me going into this that after the first 2 games, Giannis would be averaging 33 and Chris Middleton would be averaging 28, I'd say, okay, Milwaukee will take that. Giannis has been the best player in the series. Chris Middleton's been an awesome number 2 option. But what I didn't see coming, what I don't think anyone saw coming, was the Bucks' backcourt all of a sudden not just getting slightly outplayed, but dramatically outplayed by the Celtics' backcourt. Look at the comparison between the 2 backcourts. You have in the 2 games, the Celtics starting backcourt are outscoring the Bucks 96-25. Tony Snell has 2 points in each of the first 2 games, and Eric Bledsoe's averaging 11 points per game while not playing good defense. Like, that's the adjustment they need, CeCe. They need their backcourt to show up for them to have a chance at winning these next 2 games at home.
Also, the coach got to tighten up their rotation. They're playing too many players. Like, they out there, they act like it's a preseason game. They play 12, 13. I mean, they play too many guys.
They played everyone they suited up last night.
Yeah, like it's too many guys. Like, they need to tighten up the rotation. Now, they've had a lot of injuries throughout the season. So when they came into the playoffs, it was like, okay, Jabari Parker, what are we going to get out of? Nothing. They've got nothing out of him. So for me, I was listening to Shaq last night, and he said if Pat Riley was coaching this team, he'd come into the locker room, tell 2 or 3 of them, you got 5 minutes of work in the next game. You better show me something. If not, you ain't going to never play the rest of this series. So they got Jabari Parker. You mentioned the backcourt, but Brogdon's been injured. Last year's Rookie of the Year. I don't know if he's on a minute restriction, but he's got to play more minutes for Milwaukee for them to be able to get back in this series.
And just quickly on the flip side of it, because the question was about Milwaukee, so we wanted to address that. But again, all the credit in the world to Boston. Like, Boston, their players, which player on Boston is not playing up to his full potential right now? Like, Tatum had a rough game last night, but guess what? Tatum was good in the first game, and then Jaylen Brown was awesome for him. There was a moment you pointed out before the show, CeCe, that stuck out to you when we talk about how good Brad Stevens is, how good the coaching is. What'd you see at the end of, was it the third quarter?
End of the third quarter.
The Bucks have cut it to 12.
3.5 seconds to go. They miss a free throw. They immediately call a timeout, so it gets the ball at half court. He calls a play. They end up getting maybe the second or third look that they wanted of the original design of the play, but Larkins ends up hitting a clutch 3 to send the lead to 15 points. But their ability to be in sync, to know, let's call a timeout, all right? Let our coach call a play. And that right there, just when you get into playoff basketball, those set pieces, when you can on a regular basis draw up something and get guys, look, it gives guys tremendous amount of confidence.
This team is really clicking on all cylinders at a very, very good time, without many of the key components that we thought we were going to see when the season started. Before the game, Kyrie Irving sent a text message to everyone on the team. No one said what it was, but it was words of encouragement. It was something that actually everybody responded to and was very excited about. And they were like, we're all sort of in this together. And then they go out and they play a game like that.
Listen, they scored 120 points on 90 possessions. This was a Celtics team going into the series I thought would struggle to score 90 points in any game, just because playoff basketball gets tougher to score. You don't have a go-to scoring option. They're making it work. Like, all the credit in the world to the Celtics and Terry Rozier, who, while Eric Bledsoe might not know who you are, I know who you are. You were the untouchable Terry Rozier, a punchline for a long time. You were excellent last night, and in Game 1, he hit the shot that people thought was the game winner. The Celtics been great.
Good stuff. What people do you think thought was the game winner? Oh, well, just people that tweeted prematurely?
Our friend Gus Johnson, everybody thought it was the game winner.
All right, moving on. If sports says you're only as good as your last game, then the Cavs aren't great. LeBron and company looking to right their ship in Game 2 against the Pacers. Game 1 didn't go exactly as planned for Cleveland, mainly because they lost. Cleveland has struggled all season long with constant lineup changes and the pressure to return to finals for the 4th straight season. However, not surprisingly, Ty Lue said there is no reason to panic just yet.
The mood is good. You know, I think guys understand what it takes to win, to beat this team. Got to be aggressive, got to be more physical, got to own our space offensively. They picked us up full court, they denied swing passes, denied elbow passes. So we just got to be stronger with the ball. Can't turn the ball over 17 times. We got to be physical with the ball, own our space, and we'll be fine.
CeCe, Coach Lou mentioned a little bit the turnovers, the coming out being a little bit more aggressive, a quicker start than in Game 1. What do you think that the one key is for the Cavs to even up this series?
It's got to be a quick start by LeBron. If the coach is saying a quick start, he's already said it the day before, challenged LeBron to that's what they have to do. And that's LeBron getting into the scoring, not getting everyone else into the game. That, to me, it really will play itself out. But if LeBron, and what you want to watch is how many field goals he can get outside the paint. If he can get 5 to 8 field goals outside the paint,
because he didn't in Game 1.
No, it's going to open up the rest of the court for them. It will get the other guys open looks. But at the end of the day, it's not always about one thing. And you got to be able to make shots. You can say whatever you want to, but you got to be able to make shots. In the NBA, there are too many good shooters. And when you can't put the ball in the basket, LeBron doesn't have any help, you get off to the slow start. And then guys start to get a little tight. One thing we have to worry in this situation, a lot of these guys have not had success with LeBron. So if this game remains tight and we get into the second half, how will they react to that? That's another thing that I want to watch besides LeBron and getting off the mark quick.
Listen, I know LeBron said, I'm not concerned. I've been down 3-1 in the finals, like a couple days off. We're going to find out if that's the truth or not based on how he approaches the first quarter. Because there's only been 2 instances in the Eastern Conference playoffs since LeBron's been back in Cleveland where he's gone into a game trailing in the series. They actually happened in the same series, the first year he was there. And by the way, a lot of similarities between that first-year team and this team. Unproven. Not playoff experience for his teammates. Not a lot of experience as a
first year back
unit.
in Cleveland?
Yes. The first year back in Cleveland. I should have mentioned that. That was 4 years ago. The year they made their first finals, LeBron's 5th straight. Like, Kyrie didn't have finals experience. Kevin Love didn't have any of the experience that we now attribute to them. They were down 1-0 to Chicago in a series. LeBron in Game 2 took 29 shots. They were then down 2-1 to Chicago in the same series. LeBron in Game 4 took 30 shots, including the game winner in the corner to even up that series. Like, LeBron, we saw him his first year in the finals after they were down 0-1 and Kyrie was injured. What did he do the rest of the finals? Took 30-plus shots a game because that was their only path to victory. The next year in the finals, once they were down 3-1, back-to-back 41-point games. When LeBron's back is up against the wall, if he feels like we have to have this game, then he will approach it the way CeCe said yesterday. He'd like him to approach it more, be more aggressive. I'm not convinced that's the LeBron we're going to see tonight. I'm not convinced that's going to be his mentality because I'm not convinced LeBron looks at this as a back-up against the wall situation. I don't think this team's as good as the Chicago team they were facing 4 years ago, and I don't think LeBron at that moment in his career was playing as well as he's playing right now. So I think LeBron is going to stay the distributor LeBron that he was in Game 1 and trust his teammates to hit shots. I'd be surprised if LeBron takes more than 21, 22 shots tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if he has more than 13, 14 assists. I think he's going to have a similar approach as he did in Game 1 with some slight tweaks and with a different starting lineup.
I don't understand how this team comes out knowing full well that the playoffs started, knowing full well what's on the line, not playing aggressively. Kevin Love said yesterday, I would say our intensity, at least until we got hit in the mouth that first quarter, it didn't quite feel like, I guess, the playoffs. You saw it on the calendar. The game was coming up. Game 1 of the playoffs. We talking about LeBron being more aggressive or maybe shooting more? Kevin Love felt that way. Those are the 2 guys that actually have playoff experience on the team, and it felt like both of them took it for granted.
And, Jenna, you're right. It's unexcusable. Like, this is what they've been supposed to be waiting on. Oh, man, the regular season guys are bored with it. Oh, when are we going to get all our guys back? Well, all you guys are back. It is the playoffs. Everything's on the line. And it's really hard to explain. We can't make excuses for him. This should be the time that Kevin Love and the rest of the Cavs are fully engaged. But we saw a team sleepwalk through the first quarter, giving up 31 points, not to a great offensive team. And the Pacers, like the Pacers are the middle of the pack in the NBA, maybe on the lower level as far as the offensive team is concerned. So no excuse for that.
That I fully agree with. That the idea that they would Game 1, the only reason the Cavs' regular season could have been justified, the only reason, no matter the roster turnover, only winning 50 games when peak LeBron James is on your team is justified, is if it's because we're getting ready to ramp up for the playoffs. And for the first playoff experience for a lot of these guys, for the first playoff game, first playoff quarter for this Cavs team as a unit, to get beat 33-14 and just basically, they lost the game by 18 points. They lost the first quarter by 19 points. Like, the game was lost right then and there.
Yeah.
That's inexcusable. There is no disagreement. There's no daylight between CC, me, and you on that. We all agree there. Whether or not that means LeBron is going to change his approach tonight, that's yet to be seen. We'll see how nervous he is. If LeBron thinks they're up against the wall, he's going to take 25, 30 shots this
I
game.
wouldn't be shocked if we got on TV tomorrow and they were down 2-0.
Wow.
Okay, that, by the way, there's a lot of daylight there. I would be shell-shocked if they lose tonight.
Okay.
All right, let's switch gears.
We've been
Coming
watching them
up,
all year.
where will Des Bryant end up next season? That's next. First things
Michael
first.
Jordan, he wouldn't have.
Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by former Super Bowl champion and friend of the show, Greg Jennings. Greg, haven't seen you in a while.
Long-lost friend of the show.
I know, right?
We just been pen pals the last few months. Good to see you, Greg. How are you?
Hey,
It's a nice suit you got there, preacher,
when
man.
your kids in private school, they get that 2 weeks and some change vacation. So I had to make sure I planned.
But welcome back.
Oh, good to see you.
Nice.
Good to be
Good to have you. All right. We now join our continuing coverage of Des Bryant and his potential landing spot, already in progress. Des has been linked to multiple teams, including your former team, Green Bay. Greg, in a radio interview, he mentioned that he would like to play for the Giants. So many takes, so little time. Des was asked about his priorities in finding a new home. Take a listen.
It's truly not about the money. I'm gonna shoot that straight. I want to win. That's what it's always been about. I want to win. You know, if it was really about the money, I could have made a big deal. I got more touchdowns than anybody. At the end of the day, that other stat don't matter. It's how many times you can get that ball in the end zone. Last time I checked when it came to this game, you know, and I could have made a big deal. I played out all 5 of my, years. I didn't complain about that. I didn't want to complain. I was too busy trying to get on the football field, and to help win ball games with Dallas, I just want to win.
Greg, there's a lot to break down here, but if you were a Super Bowl contending team coming into the 2018 season, would you want a guy like Des Bryant on your team?
Absolutely. You could use a guy like Des Bryant on your team. He provides you with options at receiver. Number one option, I don't see that any longer. And again, he has talent. He can, if he's willing to take the next step. CC, I've listened to you for years talk about this young man, and for a while I was, like you, hoping that we would see that 13, 14 Des Bryant take the next step and continue to build on what he established. He never did that. He never really took the time to focus on the things that could get him better. Route running. Even his hand, Des Bryant attacks the ball great, but as far as having great hands, he lacks great hands. So attention to detail, I don't see that. And when you talk about joining a Super Bowl team, you're not going to be, and you're not a number one guy. You have to be locked in on those small things, the details, the fundamentals of playing the receiver position. Because now, if you're not the number one guy, you're a number two, number three guy, you're going to be depended on heavily on a Super Bowl contending team, because your number one guy is going to get the coverage leaning to him. So we need you to step up and make plays. And I think Des Bryant definitely could do that. The Giants, as he mentioned, that's
not a fit for you.
That's nowhere close to being a fit. He needs, and I hesitate.
If he goes there, you're going to have to come here with your Bible. You're going to have to be the wide receiver coach for the Giants.
Look, man, it's too many different personalities in that room.
Right. One thing I'm concerned about is when you talk about later in your career being part of a contender, you talk about being a role player. You're talking about sometimes even taking a lesser role. You're talking about sometimes looking up the next morning and seeing that, wow, I was only targeted 2 times.
Yes.
The reason why was because I didn't have the matchup that other guys are. Is Dez ready for that? I'm not even going to get there talking about is it about money? Like any guy that say it's not about money, you know what it's about. Like eventually it's going to be about the money. He had no say-so what the money was going to be in Dallas.
The quote there didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, we need about 2 or 3 interpreters to be able to interpret that whole interview. But let's just stay focused on, would he be an asset to a contender? What type of attitude is he going to bring? Is he going to be a role player? And ultimately, what Dez has to be able to understand is when you get to a certain age, the front office and the coaching staff, they're paying you for your ability, but they're also paying you for what kind of guy you're going to be in the locker room. You know, and as Greg said, if you don't think he's a #1 receiver, you better be concerned about the impact that he's going to have on the young guys that you have playing, either on how much film they study, how hard they're going to work. So Dez is a hard worker, but is he the smartest worker? And for me, after being in the league 9 years, that's the first time I'm going to look at hiring someone to help me with my routes, knowing that that's been my #1 weakness as far as my career. That right there is very concerning to me, and it would be concerning to me if I had a group of young receivers who I was exposing them to, who they were going to be learning from.
There's 2 quotes now that I can't get over with Dez. One was from the initial interview, the one we had on the show yesterday that he did with NFL Network, that we kind of glossed over, where he said, he was like, listen, he was like, I could have had way better numbers and broken even more records, but I wasn't concerned with that. I wasn't concerned with changing the offense to do what I needed. And I thought of it, and I'm like, that's not accurate. Like, just that's just flatly not accurate. The idea that the offense, when Dez was at his peak in years 3, 4, and 5, was somehow holding him back, that's not at all what I was seeing. I actually was seeing the opposite. I was seeing an offense and a quarterback that was giving him every opportunity to get as big a numbers as possible. And then the quotes there where he's saying, listen, if I wanted more, if it was about money, I got more touchdowns than anybody, I guess he means in Cowboys history. I could have, or receivers in Cowboys history, I could have, well, what could you have done? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not picking on him for that because Dez Bryant, I'm a professional communicator. He's a professional football player. He's a much better communicator than I am football player. So I'm not picking on him for that part of it. But it's the mentality, which is, that does not strike me as the mentality of someone that's like, yeah, I'll come be the #2. I'll come be the #3. And what I thought about when I was asked this question is the team I root for. Because I'm still a fan of a team. I'm a fan of my hometown Kansas City Chiefs. I think hometown Kansas City Chiefs are going to try to go win a Super Bowl this year, certainly compete in the playoffs. If the Chiefs need wide receivers, by the way. You got Tyreek Hill. CC says not a typical #1 option. They don't have a great big body guy. Like, there's a fit there. They got a little cap space as well. How would I feel if the Chiefs signed Dez Bryant? Man, I'd be nervous as hell. We got a rookie. We got a second-year quarterback we're trying to develop.
Exactly.
Like, so if we now, okay, so you don't want to put him on a team with a young quarterback. You don't want to put him on a team with a bad quarterback. You don't want to put him on we're winnowing the options of what makes sense for Dez.
Well, and the one thing that we're all talking about here is Dez as the football player, and Dez as the wide receiver, and Dez catching a ball, and Dez maybe being a mentor to young wide receivers. How much factors into Dez as the person and the person he is in the locker room and the high energy, sometimes the high tempered person he can be on the sideline and when things don't exactly go well? Do you factor that in at all when you think about bringing Dez into your organization?
Absolutely. You have to. There's no way you can overlook the total package. Is he a good football player? Yes. But is he a good enough football player to where you can overlook some of the things that he does on the sideline mid-game? If things, to CeCe's point, aren't going his way, if he's not being targeted 5, 6, 7, 8 times a game, that could be problematic. And you're having young guys that are trying to do things the right way, that you want to have guys, when you get to that year 6, 7, 8, 9 and above, now your role is starting to shift. Are you still a playmaker? Yes. But now you're looked upon as more of a mentor. I need you to set the example, be the example to these younger guys that we're bringing up and developing. You play a huge role in that. Will Dez Bryant be willing and capable of doing that? I'm not sure he's able to do that with some of the things that we've seen throughout his career on the sideline.
And you have to do your homework. Greg and I know more information than other people. We'll just tell you, do your homework. Buyer beware. You got to be concerned about the influence that he's ultimately going to have on your locker room and your receiving room, and ultimately the quarterback. At this point in his career, you can't be a negative influence on who's going to be your quarterback. Also, let's not forget, for a number of years, Jerry Jones hired someone to chaperone Dez, to make sure that he was at the meetings. Make sure, so Dez, I don't know where he is as a professional. That's the research that you must do before you bring him into your organization.
Smart stuff. Greg, stick around. Coming up, what's going on with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers? That's next on First Things First.